Good morning and welcome to the first meeting of the Municipal Council of the District of Lunenburg for 2025. I would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we recognize that we are sharing this land with our neighbors and friends, and we are all treaty people here in Mi'kma'ki. Are there any announcements, recognitions, or acknowledgements to be made this morning? Allison?
Thank you. On our first meeting in 2025, I want to acknowledge the work of two local groups who prepared meals for their communities over the holidays. The first group, the 644, has a community cooks program made up of volunteers from across a few of our districts. They've been holding a monthly cooking session to put fresh and healthy meals in the community fridge outside the Anglican Church Hall in New Germany. On December 20th, they cooked 80 holiday meals, packaged them up, and put them in the fridge. All the meals were gone in 5 hours. The second group, Fed and Nourished, is a monthly meal program of the Mount Calvary Lutheran Church. For their December meal, they encourage people to come and dine in at the Upper Northville Hall over 2 sittings. With the help of many volunteers, including Edgar and I, they served 158 ham dinners at no cost. On December 29th, in that space between Christmas and New Year's when no one feels like cooking and budgets are very tight. Both groups address food security year-round, but they really went the extra mile with these beautiful holiday meals, and I ask everyone to join me in recognizing their efforts. May their ladles continue to overflow in 2025. Thank you.
Casey, is it Casey? Yes. Thank you.
Good morning. I would like to acknowledge the hard work of the volunteers of the Mahone Bay and District Fire Department, and one member in particular. There was a breakfast held over the weekend to raise money for a firefighter who suffered a massive heart attack while fighting a fire in Blockhouse. Dennis LeBlanc has been a volunteer firefighter in the municipality for over 20 years. Given that he is unable to work at the moment, his department raised nearly $10,000 this weekend to support him and his family. One of the organizers told me that they generally serve about 300 breakfasts, and they're open from 9 to 1. And on Sunday, they served 400 plus breakfasts and were shut down by 11 a.m. This is just so indicative to me of the kind of community spirit that we have here. The community really rallied behind Dennis, and I'm honored to be able to recognize this. Dennis told me that his doctor gave him some good news today, and I hope that he'll keep it up.
Yeah, Councillor Moore?
I'd like to recognize the Ho Ho Helping Fund in New Germany, in the surrounding area. It was inspired from an example of, we all know Greg Selig from New Germany that has done it in the past years. He collected gift certificates and all that kind of stuff for years for people, for families in need, and distribute them to the families before Christmas. So his health wasn't up to it this year, so the New Germany Fire Department, spearheaded by past councillor, what was her name? Michelle Greek. She's going to love hearing that if she listens to the tape. She collected donations to give collected donations to purchase Freshmark gift certificates to give to 16 families in the area, and it was greatly appreciated, and it's something that I know will be ongoing.
Oh, any other acknowledgements? Ms. Payne? Oh, Councillor Bell, and then...
Thank you, Your Honour. I'd like to mention a resident of East LaHave, Mr. Reed Wynott, who received the CVFSA Lifetime Achievement Award. That was recently awarded at the Bridgewater annual fire department meeting, a fire department that he served for 51 years. And I might note that there are only 15 individuals in Canada that receive this award.
Ms. Payne?
This up a little bit. It's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Kelly Cunningham. She's a new member of our MODL team. She started on January the 6th as our active living coordinator, so I thought it would be a good opportunity this morning to officially introduce her to all of you in case, so you can put a face to a name. That's always very helpful. I'm sure Kelly would be delighted to answer any questions around active transportation or active living. So again, we're very excited to have her as part of our team. Do you want to say a few words, Kelly?
I'm very tall. Thank you, Trudy, and good morning, Council. I'm very excited to be here at MODL and look forward to working with you and all of our community members. Thank you.
Well, welcome, and we look forward to working with you. We know you come with lots of experience from one of our neighboring municipalities, and we'll look forward to the work you'll do with us in the future. Thank you. At this point, we move on our agenda to public input, and our public input session is allocated, we allocate 15 minutes to that, and I'll just go through the process for why public input is. First of all, it's very important. We appreciate that there are people here that want to hear about the issues and contribute to the conversation and the knowledge that Council will take into consideration as we make decisions. It's one of several opportunities for the public to engage with Council. Residents are welcome to use the public input portion of the meeting to share their thoughts with Council on municipal topics that are important to them. We ask that all statements be respectful of other members of the public, staff, and Council, and we ask that you provide your name and civic address. You can record it at the podium, and also when you introduce yourself to give your name and civic address for the record. If you have a question or concern that you would like to have addressed, then we ask that you provide that in writing so that we can contact you regarding the question or comment that you make. I will recognize and respond to questions that can be easily answered. At this tenure in my career here as mayor, I may have to defer to others, but it is at my discretion to make that determination. If the question or concern can't be answered, I can't answer it, then it will be handled as follows. We'll email you with an answer to your question or response to your concern, and we may also contact you to get additional information or further clarification of the matter to assist us in responding. We will require that you provide, again, your email address so that we can have that contact information. We will provide a summary of answers that the public poses to us and responses at a future Council meeting under business arising from the minutes. And this will form part of the public record. So that, I think, is a very important piece in how we conduct our business. In this way, we can provide the answers or responses to not only you, the resident who's asked the question, but that it's brought to all the residents of MODL. The resident then that asked the question or brought forward the concern will be advised when this matter is being addressed at Council. So if there's further up or decisions to be made, you will know. Statements and questions related to personnel or operations can be emailed to our Chief Administrative Officer, Tom McEwen, sitting to my left. There are 15 minutes allocated today, and we'll share it among the speakers, so in a few minutes I'll ask if you want to speak and we'll divide up the time. And at this point, do we have a few people that want to present? I think we have three people. So you'll each have 5 minutes, and I hope we can keep you to that. When you come to the podium, please raise or lower the podium as you need to reach the microphone. The microphone's on a little bit of a swivel, so you can adjust it. We want to make sure we hear you and that the people that are, the recording that we have and the people that may be watching the proceedings of Council can hear you well. So move the microphone closer to your mouth if you need to. Again, give your name and the community in which you live, and your email address you can write down after your presentation so that we have that record. So thank you very much for attending today. There are other ways as members of the public that you can be involved and follow our municipal proceedings. And that's either through our website, an Engage Modal has information on upcoming open houses, workshops, and other events where you can share your thoughts and have questions answered on various topics. And we had one of those last night regarding enhancement to the Osprey Village area. You're always free to contact your district councillor directly with any concerns. Their contact information is available on the municipality's website. So let's start with our public input. Who would like to go first this morning? Okay. If you just introduce yourself and where you live.
Good morning. I'm Debbie Belrose, and I live in Pine Grove. I wanted to discuss about the report that was submitted to council on the Pine Grove Park. There was not much mention of any of the concerning issues with this park. The area of this where this park is situated is set way back into dense woods. There's only one long, narrow driveway to get in and out of this park. Each side of the driveway is privately owned, so there's no room to expand to make this a safer entrance or exit to this park. This park was put in years ago with good intentions, but through the years it's been proven to be a place that is unsafe, dangerous, and open to very much destruction and vandalism. The park has suffered a lot, including cars racing in and out, spinning around, ATVs, motorbikes driving all around in there. Garbage and park equipment are left all over. There are dangerous needles, used condoms, food containers. It goes on and on. Even when we had garbage cans there, they were not emptied regularly and would overflow. A lot of us would go in and clean it up or set the garbage out for our homes. The destruction has been very disappointing to see. Park swings are broken, the bathroom was trashed, the light fixtures and all of the stuff in the bathroom was ripped off. We've had 2 fires set in the park. One involved the little library where all the books were shredded and burned, and the gazebo floor was set fire and broken. The fire department had no access to water as the well there is locked shut with a bar across it. A pumper truck had to be called in, and there was issues with the driveway being narrow for emergency vehicles getting in and out. It was a long, dry summer, and we were really worried about it spreading to the woods. Fireworks have been frequently set off in the park, and every weekend there was lots of loud music, partying, disturbing all of us who lived nearby. There have been way too many calls and reports to the municipal office, councillors, and the RCMP. It has become so frequent that the police have set up regular checks and drive-bys for the park and area, and we frequently see the police on Charlie Lane. The park has been closed as all other parks as of December 2nd, and yet this one still remains open. There's no gate or anything there to stop anybody from going in. Just as of yesterday and a week before, the bathroom door has been ripped off, community message board ripped off, the wire for a power pole is laying in the driveway, and again, we have more garbage and used condoms lying there. Lots of more reports have been called in. We just wonder when this will all stop. It is nice to have a park in this area, but definitely not this place is for it. We've all moved here for a peaceful, quiet, natural beauty of Pine Grove, and would like to do so without all this added extra stress, noise, and drama. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, for your very detailed outline of the challenges of the park, and it is on our agenda today, so I appreciate the input you've provided for us this morning, and you're welcome to stay to hear the conversation that we'll have later in the agenda. Thank you. Who would like to go next? If you just come to the mic and introduce yourself and...
Okay, George Barani, I'm with Bridgewater Watershed Protection Alliance. I'd like to thank Council for getting this on the agenda so quickly. You're going to discuss this later, and we're asking that you write the Minister of Environment asking him to review the decision of putting a quarry in the watershed and to have a full consultation with the public about that. our group's application went in 2.5 years ago. It was supported by this council in the town of Bridgewater. And the quarry application went in 6 months later and has already been approved. And we feel that the decision on the wilderness area designation should have been looked at, a decision made before that, because the quarry intends to use an access road that we asked be designated as a wilderness area. This council and 12 organizations also lobbied the government successfully in 2022 to prevent forestry off the Menamkeag Lake area and near where this quarry is going in. The previous government set a precedent in preventing a quarry from going in back in 2013 when citizens organized, when they discovered that a road is already being built. So I hope that you do write a letter supporting that and continue to support our organization. I'm going to ask Taylor Creaser to also speak to this issue and talk about species at risk in the watershed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barani.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Creaser, and I'm a conservation campaigner with the Nova Scotia chapter of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. I live in Lake Paul, Nova Scotia, so just outside of Lunenburg County in Kings. We are a science-based, non-governmental organization with a mandate to protect public lands and waters across Mi'kma'ki. And I want to thank Council for getting our concerns about the quarry planned near Menamke Lake on the agenda later today. As you probably all know, the Petite Riviere watershed is a really ecologically important place. Part of the watershed forms the water supply for the town of Bridgewater, and it's also the last place on Earth where the endangered Atlantic whitefish is still found in the wilds. Because of this, CPAWS has been working with the Bridgewater Watershed Protection Alliance to designate a wilderness area on the public lands of the watershed. As part of this work, we've conducted extensive field surveys on the public lands in the area throughout 2024. Our results aren't yet finalized, but because of the urgency of the discussion, we wanted to bring them to you today. We have found to date 21 rare species on or adjacent to the public lands in the watershed, 11 of which are listed under the provincial Nova Scotia Endangered Species Act. So some of these species are the Atlantic whitefish, which is known to the area. However, we've also found other species like at-risk landbirds, such as the endangered Canada warbler, olive-sided flycatchers, common nighthawks, and eastern wood pewees. Rare trees, such as the provincially threatened black ash. Reptiles that are at risk, like eastern ribbon snakes and common snapping turtles, as well as lichens, which have been documented by lichenologist Francis Anderson, such as Nova Scotia's provincial lichen, the blue felt lichen, and the pea green shield lichen, which, until it was documented in this area, was previously unknown to our entire province. So that was quite a significant finding as well. Given our work in the watershed, we were caught off guard when we heard about plans for a quarry in the area. It's always a concern when industrial developments are encroaching on areas with so many documented rare species. And I'll just hold up a little map. Again, not fully finalized results. However, each one of these red dots represents an occurrence of a rare species that have been documented in the watershed. So quite a significant spread on and nearby the public lands. So right now we are asking for a pause on the plans for the quarry, and we would like it to be subject to a more rigorous environmental review, as well as a more extensive consultation and more study due to the sensitivity of the area, both as the water supply for the town of Bridgewater and as an area with so many rare and at-risk species. Furthermore, a designation of a wilderness area on the public lands would add additional protection to the area and help to safeguard the water supply. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that input on, which will contribute to our discussion later on, and all of you are welcome to stay for that as we proceed with the discussion around the quarry situation. At this point, we'll move on with our agenda to have an approval of the agenda. If someone would, from council, would make a motion. Councillor Hubley, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Brooks? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. The minutes of the December 10th meeting of Municipal Council have been circulated. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made to those minutes? Anyone note anything? I don't see anything from any of the councillors, so we'll approve those as circulated. We actually don't need a motion if there's no corrections and additions to be made. There's no business arising from the minutes and awarding of tenders, so we'll move on to presentations this morning. And our first presentation is from the Lunenburg County Wheels Group, and Jerome Tanner and Darren Lance and Harry Beach are here. I think it's just Jerome and Harry that are, I'm not sure who's presenting. Okay. Welcome.
Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I am the president of Lunenburg County Wheels, Jerome Tanner. We appreciate the opportunity to update council on the operation of Lunenburg County Wheels. With me this morning are our treasurer, Harry Beach, and operations manager, Darren Lance. It is now over 9 months that we started the last leg of our expansion to include all of MODL and the towns of Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, and Bridgewater. We are pleased that we are able to provide a service to all our residents, which is really appreciated. I will now ask Darren to provide some update on our operation, and then Harry will provide some update on our finances. Darren?
Thank you, Jerome. Good morning, everybody. So as Jerome mentioned, we just would like to provide an update as to what's been going on with LC Wheels for the last 8 months. It's been a very busy 8 months for us. So we added to our fleet this year. So we now have the 8-passenger bus, 1 7-passenger minivan that Modal supported us to get to help us start our expansion, and the 4 8-passenger ProMaster vans that are all wheelchair accessible were added to the fleet in April. As Jerome mentioned, we have now expanded throughout the entire Lunenburg County West area, including the 3 towns. So we're very excited that we were able to do that, and that's what was holding that. Final leg of that expansion was the receiving of the new vehicles. We've also had to expand our staff. Obviously, we're more vehicles on the road. It means we need more staff to man them. So we hired 3 full-time drivers, 2 part-time drivers. We have 9 casual drivers. We still have 3 volunteer drivers remaining with us from the Senior Wheels days, and 3 volunteer drivers that help us out with community events. So those are events that may happen on a weekend or after hours that we need drivers for. Very pleased with the uptake on our service with the expansion. We're trending in a positive direction. In October of this year, we maxed out at 1,300 riders. So last year we were doing 500-600 per month, and this year has really taken off. So we've more than doubled that for this year, and again, still trending in the positive direction. And just I guess to note, I think it was 26% of those rides are residents of MODL. So where are people going? We've had a huge influx of people using us to get to work. Obviously, we've had a lot of immigrants move into our area, don't have cars, don't have driver's licenses yet, so we've had a big influx with people using us to get to work in the morning and to get their driving lessons at the LCLC. Workshops, so we do a weekly run for the mental health and addictions at the Dawson Center. Training, we have a couple of students that are used to get to the NSCC, a couple of one younger student that uses to get to school, and lots of medical appointments, access to food, whether that is food banks or grocery stores. Physical activity, we have the Ashwood Lodge, which book us once a week to come into the LCLC to use the walking track and enjoy a coffee or a tea afterwards. Social connections, and so people use this to go visit their friends. So it's a wide variety of what everybody needs to get around and stay connected to their communities. So what's new? Covered most of this. I didn't mention in January we hired a new dispatcher. So we used to use a call center for that. With the addition of the new vehicles, we said probably it would be too much for them to handle. So we brought that in-house, hired a full-time dispatcher, which has worked out really good for us. It gives us complete control over our bookings and how we schedule our rides. In April, as I mentioned, we brought in the 4 new ProMaster vans. June, 3 full-time drivers. October, responding to the strong demand. So we were getting a lot of rejections because people were calling up. We only had 4 vehicles on the road, and we had to turn people away. So we were turning 80, 90 people away for a couple of months, which wasn't what we wanted to do. We didn't want to discourage people from using us, so the board got together and decided to put on the 5th vehicle, which obviously wasn't in our budget for this year. And that's resolved our problem. Our call-in rejections have gone down to practically nothing. In October, because we hired a new staff member, and we also hired in November a part-time admin person, we moved into a little bigger office in our current building. And in January, we launched, in cooperation with the Rural Transportation Association and the provincial government, they launched a dispatch software for all rural transportation associations throughout Nova Scotia, with the idea that we would get more efficiency from our rides. So it's an AI-driven software that helps us get more efficiency out of our rides. So if somebody's calling in Mahone Bay and then somebody's calling just outside, the software will allow us to pick up people en route versus somebody having to sit there and physically, well, he's there and she's there, and I can combine those two. So it's done automatically through the software. So much bigger advantage. Obviously, new software always has their little issues, and we're working through those, but in the end, it'll be a great asset to the organization. So again, we appreciate your support that you have given us over the years, and I just want to mention that what's not in this presentation is the hundreds of people, the faces and the names that hop on our vehicles every month. And we are their only connection to the community. They're the only way they can get to their grocery store, get to their friends, get to wherever they get to their medical appointments, wherever they need to go. And every once in a while, I get the opportunity to drive myself, and it is heartwarming to listen to the stories and to hear the appreciation of the people that are getting on our vehicles, how much they appreciate our service, that we're here, that we're supported, and we're able to get them from point A to point B. So, thank you. Harry?
Thank you very much. My name is Harry Beach, and I'm the treasurer of the Lunenburg County Wheels. operation that's still run by the Senior Wheels Association. So we're, I guess, a captured being of that group. I owned a car for almost 60 years, and over all that time, I took personal public transportation pretty much for granted. The only time I thought about it is if I ran out of gas or I had trouble with a clutch or a transmission or something like that. It took becoming a volunteer for the Senior Wheels Association 9 years ago to open my eyes and make me really understand the importance of public transportation, because I saw people using it who didn't have the choices that I had. And it's made me passionate about this area of public service. We can't do what we need to do if we can't get where we need to go. And Lunenburg County Wheels makes that happen for people, and we make a real difference in people's lives. But my purpose here is to outline the financial situation in the organization and take any questions that you may have about that. We started the year with a significant operating surplus. I provided you with the financial information, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the table in great detail. If you're interested, you've done that, and you'll have questions. And if you're not, the broad strokes I'm going to give you now will probably do you. We started with a significant surplus. Because of the supply chain problems that we had, there's, I guess, some lemonade to be made with that lemon. We got money that we would have spent on running the vehicles and paying salaries that sat in the bank and earned us interest. So that cushion is there, and it's given us flexibility to explore the reality of, or the potential of a service in a little bit more, in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So let's take a quick look at the projections that we have. We've given you projections going out 3 years. The end of this fiscal year is where the most rigor would exist, but we're getting about 55% of our revenue from the provincial government. They gave us a $62,000 a year increase this year, unsolicited by us. It just was announced one day, and it's a wonderful thing having an election, I guess. Municipal grants give us another $90,000. That's 20% of our operating revenue, and a good chunk of that comes from MODL, and we're very, very grateful for it. Fares bring in about 10%. Our fares are low, thanks in part to money that we get from you. I think Darren went through yesterday at my request, and we're using pretty much all of that to reduce the fares. We're, I think, about $12,000 used of that this year. It's a rough calculation, and it's the best we can do, but you've made a real difference there. And we fundraise, we make some money on interest. We get money from community organizations like the United Way, the Hospital Auxiliary, the Lions Clubs in New Germany and in Bridgewater, the Legion, and individual businesses and individuals themselves. On the expense side, we're spending about a third of our budget on our admin, and that includes Darren's salary, the salary of the full-time dispatcher that we have now, the part-time admin support person, the rent, the telephones, and all that stuff that any organization has to deal with. Our expenditures have risen quite a bit with the expansion. We've had to triple our rent pretty much to accommodate the more space that we needed when we brought in the additional staff to deal with the additional work, and it snowballs. We think we've got it pretty much in a solid situation now. I don't anticipate big changes there. The two-thirds of the budget we spend on keeping the vehicles on the road and putting the drivers in the driver's seat and paying for the maintenance and operation for the fuel. And I guess that's kind of that leaves us with a deficit, a small deficit this year, but a deficit that will grow to about $100,000 a year going outward. We can handle that. We've got significant money in the bank, but that's going to be gone. 3 years from now, we won't have that. So we need to bring in more money, raise our fees, our fares, or reduce our costs in some way. So some combination of those things will be our reality a year from now. We can do what we're doing now at the level we're doing it, but we can't do that in perpetuity. We would be unsustainable, and it would be irresponsible of us to do that. So our clients really appreciate our service. Darren spoke to that. I think many of you heard that on the doorsteps during the election. You've told me that when we gave you a tour, or you used our vehicles to do a tour of some of your facilities. So you know that, we know that, we want to keep doing what we do. That's the story. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I take, you'll take questions?
Absolutely.
Yes. Councillor Brooks.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys very much. I really applaud what you do. I'm very passionate about public transit, and it's really essential in our community for what you're doing, so I applaud that work. The one number that was concerning to me on your graph was the average number of people per ride, which feels very low. 1.86, 1.8 is the average, I think, on that graph. Yeah. So it would be interesting to see how we might be able to help up that ridership. I know the dispatch is probably a significant cost. One of the things we will be discussing is perhaps an app that would help would have a broad impact on the community, and perhaps one of the things that could be part of it is how to incorporate you guys, find ways to sort of, have people do their booking through that or something. I'm sure the dispatch cost is a lot. I wanted some clarification. You said the software helped do the scheduling of this. How is that separate from your dispatch?
Our dispatch is using the software to do the dispatch work.
Okay,
so
okay.
And to add to that, as part of the software rollout, there is going to be a driver's app and eventually a passenger app. So so that basically what happens is somebody calls in, we type the information into the software, and the software schedules the rides to be most efficient, and we have seen that it's routing it, so we're picking up a couple of people and dropping them off. So it should be making us more efficient as time goes on. The driver's app, so we've gotten tablets with that. So basically the tablet goes in the vehicle, the driver push starts. It's a moving map display. It takes him to where he needs to go and follows the schedule.
Could it be fully automated? Could you take the dispatcher out of the equation?
Not at this point. I don't. There's certainly not now, because there's a lot of. The software's still kind of in development,
okay.
So there's still a lot of input into that. But I say the third element to this is the passenger app, which eventually will allow people to book online. From what we hear, I haven't seen that part of the software yet. It hasn't been rolled out. But obviously, we are dealing with a lot of elderly people, and they're not necessarily tech savvy. So it'll take a number of years before we're able to transition to maybe a completely AI environment. But I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to have some human intervention.
Thank you, guys.
Other questions? Councillor Vino.
It's not a question, but a comment. I just want to reiterate how well the service is being used. I don't think I drive from one town to the next without passing one of your vans on a Monday to Friday, and this morning was no exception. And I saw first this morning, and it was on Northwest Road, and one of your vans pulled out of a driveway. It got no more than 3 kilometers down the road, and it stopped at another residence. And I thought, they're doing multiple stops and probably going to similar spots, and it's the first I've seen that. And you made a comment here today about doing that, and that's great.
Yeah, we started to track numbers of rides per. So how many people we have in a vehicle, and that's because we've determined that it's important to to keep an eye on that. It's a big inefficiency to have a vehicle empty or a vehicle with one person, and finding ways to up that number is a challenge for anyone who's running a dial-a-ride type operation. The danger is it becomes a taxi, and the challenge is to make it become a bus. And so, you know, we're by measuring it, we're aware of it, and that makes us think about it, which you thought about as well, and we're pleased about that.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. I saw a post on Facebook that you're going out in the community to get input, information, what have you. Wondering when you have other meetings, if we could be notified as to where and when. I was speaking to Eric Kustavet, and he mentioned that we might be going out to Baker Settlement or Chelsea or something like that. So it'd be something that you could let us know so we could attend.
By all means, we can let you know when we're going out. We do, you know, the big challenge, and you know, you think you've been doing this for 30 years and the expansion for almost 2 now. You'd think by now people would know about the service, but it is surprising when you get out into the community events how many people are just hearing about this for the first time. And so we will continue to do community events, and we'd love to let you know when we're doing them so we can get more people to attend. Thank you.
Just to give a plug to Eric. Eric does a newsletter, and he sends that out as well, and hopefully he'll be including that type of information in the newsletter.
Councillor Smith.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I just wondered if you collect any kind of data on gender and like who's using the service. And I ask because during the municipal election, Transition House Association of Nova Scotia put out a report saying that public transportation is one of the ways that we can reduce rates of domestic violence, which is on a lot of people's minds these days with the events that have been in the news. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, do you track, you know, who's using the service and whether, you know, women in our rural communities who may be isolated and relying on the service are using it?
Currently, we do not track gender. We do track age demographic. I guess part of the benefits of the new software is our ability to pull information out on our rides. It's much greater because it's in a database versus an Excel spreadsheet. So we should be able to get that information as we build up data in our database.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Last term, it was mentioned quite a few times about sitting down and partnering with other municipalities to bring collaborative transit to all of Lunenburg County. But I think there was something about going outside some boundaries or something through the URB or something like that, that would have to have provincial, the province would have to say that they could go outside the, is there anything like that on the plate, on the docket for the years to come, do you think? I'm asking anybody if they know.
I can answer that partly. There are 22 or 24 rural transportation associations throughout Nova Scotia. In theory, I should be able to take somebody to our border, and the neighboring RTA should be able to pick them up and carry them on. There is a licensing problem with that, in that the passenger is the one that has to make those connections. I can't, a passenger can't call me and ask me to get to Liverpool, for say.
Okay.
Because they call, that's considered tagging, and our licensing doesn't allow that. So there are some barriers. I know there is some provincial shifts on the government department that we're under, and that's all kind of changing now. So I'm hoping that we can maybe get some of these current rules changed to allow us to be able to get people where, you know, outside our area. I'll qualify that a little bit. We can, under our current license, go anywhere in Nova Scotia, but you know, right now we're concentrating on our area and getting that under control. And obviously, if you're expanding and going out further, it means more vehicles, more drivers, and more money. But you know, ideally, we would we're looking at, because we do get a lot of calls for people that need to get to hospitals outside our region. So that would be probably the next thing that we'd want to look at. And there's no real restrictions to that other than logistics. So.
Thank you.
Anything? Councillor Reinhardt.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, and I echo several of the councillors on how important the service is, so thank you for that. I just have a quick question. You mentioned the ridership numbers by where people live. Could you repeat that? And I think you said, was it 26%?
Yeah, I think it was 26% is from the MODL. So our ridership numbers are from the point of pickup. So if somebody gets picked up in MODL, it gets ticked as MODL. If that person travels to Bridgewater or Lunenburg or whatever, then their next pickup would be flagged as Lunenburg. So although it may be an MODL, they may live in MODL, they'll get tagged as a Lunenburg pickup.
So if 25% of people are being picked up in the municipality and they go to town to do something, and on the way back they would be tagged as town, so it's twice that number if it's all round trips.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. I was just at the doctor's, and I saw a sheet of all the places that, or organizations that do pick up and transportation. And Lunenburg County Wheels was listed, but also Seniors Wheels was listed. Is there still Seniors Wheels?
Well, the Senior Wheels is still our official organization name. We are registered with joint stocks under that name, and we have a business name, Lunenburg County Wheels, which is registered to us. So we are the operator of the Senior Wheels Association, is the operator of Lunenburg County Wheels.
So can people still, because it was saying for seniors only, 60 and up, and free?
No.
Okay,
we don't operate.
Okay, well, it was on their list and being advertised at the doctor's office. So I just thought I'd, give you that information, and perhaps you may want to correct that.
Maybe we'll be in touch with you to find out who it is.
Just an update, I guess. The Rural Transportation Solutions Fund has just given or announced another call for capital purposes for buses and vans and that type of stuff. So right now we have the old bus, the big bus, which is costing us a lot of money with respect to repairs and operating costs when we operate it. So we're looking at now maybe changing some of our vehicles, and rather than the accessible vans, we're looking at maybe getting some smaller SUVs or hybrids or electric vehicles, and so that's what we're working on next. So I just want to give you an update on that.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation today. I think it was very informative and represents the work that you're doing and the evolution of the work of your organization. Public transit has come up a lot in discussions already early in this council group, and so I feel that this will be one of our topics of conversation and work over the next number of months, and we look forward to working with you because you are an integral part of developing a more extensive public transit system for our whole county. We know that the town has a system in place, but for us to get involved in it, we know we need to talk to all of the people that are now currently delivering transport in order to make a system that really starts to build a good foundation for how we can serve the more outlying areas in our community. So we look forward to working with you in the months to come. So thank you very much.
As do we. Thank you very much.
We will move on with our agenda. We have a presentation from Broad Cove at 10:15, so we are going to skip over that and go to consideration of correspondence, and this relates to the designated watershed area in Lunenburg County, which we heard about earlier in our meeting today, and Abid will lead us through this and the correspondence we received and our response to that.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. Yes, I will be, I can quickly provide a little bit of a background. So municipality has received 2 responses regarding the quarry development in the Petite Riviere watershed. One response is from, the first response is from a resident, Mr. George Burani, who also represents the Bridgewater Watershed Protection Alliance, who has raised concerns about the quarry's potential impact on the watershed, and this concerns includes risks to the endangered Atlantic whitefish, other species at risk, and also the drinking water supply for the town of Bridgewater and the nearby communities in MODL. Mr. George has also highlighted the strong public and municipal support for designating the public lands within the watershed as wilderness area, and he has requested that the municipal council write a letter to the Premier and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change to advocate for rescinding the quarry's permit and also exploring stronger local zoning to protect the watershed area. The second response came from Gerald Vino Excavation Company Limited. It is the company behind this proposed quarry. The company emphasized that they have followed all the provincial guidelines and they have obtained the quarry approval in May of 2024 after meeting all the necessary requirements. And they also confirmed that public consultation notices were also published in the Chronicle Herald in the month of February 2023. And the public feedback was included in their submission to the Nova Scotia Department of Environment and Climate Change. The company also hired local experts, including hydrologists, hydrogeologists, engineers, and cultural resource professionals to ensure the environmental protection. And their approval includes an environmental management plan that outlines the mitigation measures for the quarry's operation. And they also noted that their long-standing history of operating safely in the region that contributes to local jobs and infrastructure projects. And the company also disputed claims of environmental harm, emphasizing that they have complied with all the regulations. And additionally, the provincial approval document is publicly available for everybody to review. So after hearing both the responses, the Petite Riviere watershed, as we all know, is an ecologically sensitive area that serves as also was highlighted by 2 residents in the morning. It's a primary or the sole habitat for the endangered Atlantic whitefish, and it's also home to 21 at-risk species. So it is also a primary water source for the town of Bridgewater and the nearby communities. And while the quarry has met all the provincial approval requirements and includes mitigation measures to address environmental risks, public's concern about the long-term impacts on the water quality and the biodiversity certainly highlights the importance of strong protections for the watershed. So staff recommends that Municipal Council reaffirms their support for the wilderness area designation of public lands in the watershed and write a letter to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. And what this designation could do is provide additional and long-term protection for the watershed and its ecological and water resources. Regarding the development in the area, as council would be aware, the municipality is limited in its jurisdiction. They cannot regulate the provincially approved industries like quarries, mines, forestry, especially under local land use planning, because these regulations mainly addresses structures rather than activities themselves, and these activities fall under provincial jurisdiction. However, as part of the MODL 2040 process, planning staff will propose new regulations that would address development in the watershed areas to strengthen local protections. But overall, in conclusion, staff do recommend focusing on advocating for the wilderness area designation of the public lands in the watershed area. This would provide the highest level of legal protection for the public lands, and future approvals for industrial activities such as this, quarries, would automatically be prohibited or significantly restricted. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Could we, that's the background information to this, and what I would like us to do is put the motion on the floor and then have discussion and questions that might relate to this to keep the discussion focused on what our action will be. So if I could have a councillor make the appropriate motion. Councillor Reinhardt.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that the mayor write to Premier Tim Houston and Timothy Hallman, Minister of the Department of Environment and Climate Change, supporting the request received to conduct a review of the quarry permit issued in the Lapland area.
And do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Now we'll open the floor for discussion and questions. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. Quick question. Can someone tell me, is this the same road that the Chapman brothers attempted to upgrade or put in when Gary Ramey intervened? It is the exact same road. Thank you. Pardon me?
No, you can't.
Point of order.
Just.
Can someone around the table answer that question for me?
I believe it is not the same road. And the property this in question is near Caribou Lake, which is publicly available document. The Chapman brothers, which was back in 2013.
Yes.
Yeah. I wouldn't know the exact
That was also around
location.
Caribou Lake. It was like 2 kilometers, I think it said in the letter, from Caribou Lake. Just wondering, yeah.
But I can confirm that and get back to you. The exact location of the Chapman brothers where they were intending to expand that road.
Well, I'm not worried about the Chapman brothers. I'm worried about the current road. Thank you.
Thank you. As you stated, we have no authority regarding quarries, right? And supposedly they've done all their permitting. However, I don't see what this motion is to write a letter to the government asking them to review those permits because they are in question as to whether or not proper things were done so that those permits could be issued, right? And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't, really. It's just we're asking them just to review, right? And so I would be very much in favor of this.
And also, if I may, besides the review, and also to further advocate for the public lands be designated as a wilderness area in the region.
Which is consistent with the previous council's
right.
communication with the provincial government.
Yep.
Another question, Councillor
Yeah, but just that this particular motion did not include that designation that Abhi has just mentioned. So we would need another motion for that separately, or a report regarding it, whatever.
The letter can absolutely reference that. There's been a council motion on that, so you're covered there. The letter will make reference to the background information. The motion covers the intent of the letter, which is asking for the review. It doesn't need to specify the entire context of the letter.
Councillor Brooks.
Can you get into a little bit more detail about, I understand the concerns, but it's light on specifics. So I understand that there are species there, I understand that it's a watershed, I understand where we get our water from, but please get into more specific details about the concerns, about the actual work that would happen there that would threaten that environment, please.
So the quarry in question they have proposed is for the construction aggregates that they would gather through the quarry. It's under 4 hectare in size. It's near Caribou Lake, and the approval process are treated differently. If the quarries are above 4 hectares, they would have to go through a comprehensive environmental assessment. But if they are smaller size, they don't really have to go through environmental assessment, but they do have to have an environmental review, which they did, the company in question. And the concerns are understandably because it's in a sensitive area where the water quality, that could impact, if anything goes wrong, could impact the water quality and the species at risk in the watershed area. Were there any other specifics that you were looking for?
I guess I'd like some examples of something going wrong.
Something going wrong could be like runoff from the dust from the quarry's operations, like even though they would have sediment control in place as part of their environmental management plan. Oil spill-off from the trucks that would be operating in the quarry are such examples that could, the pollutants could enter into the aquifers or in the channels that leads to the water.
Do we currently have roads and that are traveled by people that are all around that watershed?
There would be. It's like a big area. There certainly are some private roads, but around the specific property in question, on the map I don't see any. They recently also received an access to their property through Crown Land, which they got approved for by the department.
Thank you.
Other questions from councillors? Councillor Oikel.
It's not a question, but would arsenic also be a problem? Because within that area as well, there is arsenic within the ground, is there not? And would that not also could be released?
Less likely so, because arsenic, it was previously because of the existing gold mines in the history, but these operations, I would not know, because this is mostly for the construction aggregates, just to break down the rocks and get those aggregates. I don't really see any arsenic specifically would be associated with these operations, but yeah.
All right. Councillor Bell?
Thank you. There will be those who will argue that aggregate is a necessary product for development. However, I second the motion because I feel that the danger to freshwater supplies is a higher concern for me, because without fresh water, you will limit future development. We also mentioned that there's a 4-hectare area of operation, but that does not mean, to my understanding, that any changes would be limited to 4 hectares because of runoff going outside. And I think there are a number of examples where runoff has been a major concern for development like this. And I also believe that there are examples right here in Nova Scotia where such quarries have had an effect on existing wells for residences outside of the operating area. You may have examples of that, or the information may be easy to get. But it is those concerns that outweigh the development need for this particular thing, in my opinion. So I will be supporting the motion as it's been presented by Councillor Reinhardt.
Counselor Smith, and then Counselor DeLong.
Thanks for the presentation. I also will be supporting the motion. I just wondered if you have any idea why the wilderness area decision is so delayed, seeing as we have very ambitious land protection targets in this province, and everything that I've seen about this area lines up with an area that should be protected. It's it's a water source. We have like all these endangered species, and we're like in the midst of a huge biodiversity crisis. Like, what is going on with the province that they are not moving forward on designating this as a wilderness area, or at least making the decision?
I think I would not know, because it's the province who is taking time in making that to happen. There's been huge support from the public here. Municipalities have provided the letters, but they are taking time in making that to happen. We can certainly, as part of the letter, also ask that why is it taking so long? Understand it, as you already highlighted, why it needs to be designated as a wilderness area. But yeah, it is the province who could answer, like, why are they taking so long? And yeah.
Counselor DeLong.
Thank you. Ditto what she said, but my question is just about geography. Where's Caribou Lake? I mean, I know we're Manamkiak, and I don't know how to pronounce the other one, Milipsigate. There's a Caribou Lake on Cornwall Road. Is there another Caribou Lake? Okay.
If you would like, I can quickly show it on the map.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I understood there are
there
two
are two Caribou Lakes, yes.
Okay.
There's one in the designated watershed area, and then there's one up towards the other side, which is easily picked up by Google Map. I also could not find it, like, that is not in watershed area, but then when I zoomed in, oh, there is another Caribou Lake.
That's really confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've had, I think everyone's had a chance to speak to this. Unless there's someone else that wants to ask a question, I'd be ready to Councillor Reinhardt.
Is there any work happening now in the area? And if so, is there any way to get some kind of pause on that until this is sorted out?
When you say area, did you mean what, this particular quarry's operations? So I think because they already have provincial approval, so they are going forward with what they need to do. But certainly, as part of the review, we could ask them to, while they're reviewing, they could maybe ask them to pause while the province is conducting review until they make the final decision to allow them to continue their operations. Yeah.
Okay, the motion as we have it now is that we will write the Premier and the Minister of the Department of Environment and Climate Change supporting the request we've received to conduct a review of the quarry permit issued in the Lapland area. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed? Motion is carried unanimously, so we will act on that. Might be a good time to just take a 5-minute break while we wait for our next presentation and come back. So we'll take 5 minutes. We're going to resume the meeting. If everyone could take their places, please. I'm happy to welcome Shelley Scott to the podium to speak on behalf of the Broad Cove Community Association. And welcome. And if you could just state your name and your address for the record, please.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for entertaining us today. Shelley Scott. I live at 7091 Highway 331 in Broad Cove. So today we were here to talk about the Broad Cove Beach adjacent lands. It's a coastal open space asset in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. The picture that's here is an exact picture of a piece of that land. The Broad Cove Community Association has been around for over 100 years. In many aspects, the community itself has been certainly supporting the community, this land, for a very long time. The mandate of our association is really two things. One is to support the community hall, and the other, which was something added back in 2003, is to protect and preserve the adjacent lands associated to the Broad Cove Beach. Just wanted to point out, because you folks have generously helped us through the past years with modal grants, picture of the hall, the siding project that we finished last year. It's looking a lot different than it did a year or so before that. Broad Cove. A few times I've been here, there had been members that didn't know where we were, so thought I'd show you a picture. You just have to leave Bridgewater. You can get there many different ways, but the one I like the most is to drive down along the LaHave River and around by some beautiful beaches along the way till you reach Broad Cove. The adjacent lands, pictured here in the back, I've tried to highlight in the blue area there. It's 4.48 acres, and right now it's classified as owner unknown. The beach lands, it's a mix of woodland, ponds, dunes, buffers effect of the sea level rise. It's used daily for people walking in the summer and winter, some swimming, paddle boarding, they kayak, they are kayaking and paddle boarding this winter all year long. A lot of bird watchers show up. It's relaxing and other outdoor activities. In the summer, you can find many people enjoying that area. I've added a few pictures of the snapping turtles that show up there, and then we, as a community group, try to protect that. So this particular mission we're on today has been going on for over 22 years. Started back in 2002, formally, where the community brought forward to the AGM concerns over the beach lands, the adjacent lands to the beach, and they were concerned on many cases, but it was the bigger concern is it just didn't have an owner. And then in 2003, that was when Broad Cove Community Association decided to add in the stewardship of the beachlands to their mandate. From 2003 to 2023, we have met with Modal, the provincial government, anybody that would listen really, bringing forward this initiative. You know, we had some very positive outcomes, and then we just haven't been able to get it concluded. But in 2004, we had some great news that Modal brought forward, that they were willing to initiate an expropriation process with your guys' consent and continued voting practices on whether to go forward. which is great. Our vision is to ensure the property remains accessible to the public for regulated day use. We want to conserve this property's sensitive geographical, biological, and environmental features from further deterioration. And we need the means to prohibit overnight camping and other abuses to protect the security of the community. During COVID, there was a huge influx of campers that would show up at that location on a daily, weekend basis. In past presentations, we would have shown pictures of how many campers that were there. I will say last summer it was quiet. There's still campers, but not the packs that we had seen previously, which was nice. What we're hoping for is that BCCA and Modal move forward with a conservation plan for this piece of land. We want to enter into a stewardship agreement with Modal where we would support and help with how we move that forward. We're looking for signage that provides awareness that Modal is the owner. We had gone out to the Oakland Conservation Area and had a visit. It's beautifully done. It looks great. We're looking for educational displays regarding the importance of local habitat protection. It's amazing how humans can be so insensitive to some areas. I'm very fortunate that I live very close to this area. I can see it from my front doorstep. And I see so many abuses, it just, you know, you're like, why do you walk over the marron grass when there's a path right there? Like, why do you choose to destroy it over here? So sometimes it's quite unsettling. Waste management responsibilities, designed parking for vehicles and pathways for foot traffic. It just kind of supports my, let's show people where to walk. Let's give them a path, or designate the path. The path's already there. And then really opportunities for future enhancements, and they're very simple. Seasonal portable toilets and beach wheelchair access matting. So we're not really looking for a lot. I want to thank you again to Modal for the ongoing commitment to the protection of the coastal assets, and in particular the Broad Cove Beach adjacent lands. And again, there's a few additional pictures here of that area.
Thank you very much. I just asked Tom to update the group on where we're at with the expropriation steps, and then we'll open it up for questions from council members, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. So as indicated, MODL undertook the market value appraisal of the property. We have that information back that'll be presented to council, which is the next step in moving forward in the expropriation process. So we'll be looking at that later today. And it was at our request that the Broad Cove Community Association looked at the various options that were available as a conservation area or as a park. And we asked them to provide us with their thoughts on which method of moving forward was their preference. And so that was the presentation today. That'll be something that council takes into consideration as we move forward in the expropriation process, and council decides the dedicated use to which the property would be used if it's successfully expropriated.
Okay, I think that kind of puts a package together so that council members are clear about why you'd be presenting now when we haven't got it finalized, but it's all part of the process. So thank you, Shelley, and we'll open it up for councillors who may have questions. Anybody have questions? Councillor Brooks.
So what is your money ask for this? What would you like out of this? When you talk about the parking lots, is that something you'd like Modal to pick up the tab for? Or I'm just curious what your ask is.
My understanding, based on the information provided from Tom for us to review, that yes, Modal would be taking responsibility for that.
Councillor DeLong.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really happy that you went to Oakland Conservation. I think that that's an excellent model for how you guys might want to approach this. So yeah, best of luck.
Councillor Smith.
Just around people who are camping, is there any indication that this is a result of the housing crisis? that you see more people. I know that, you know, I've talked with the South Shore Housing Action Coalition before, and they've said, you know, as far as rural patterns of homelessness, people do tend to, you know, they're not camping right downtown in towns, but they're kind of pushed out to woods and beaches. I just wonder if you have any insight on that.
I would say no. The only vision we had of that last summer, somebody came and it appeared that they set up a tent and they would leave for the day and then come back. So it almost felt like they were going maybe to work and then coming back, just using that as a hotel place, to be honest. And they were there for like a full working week. But other than that, no. No, it's really, you know, we get a lot of surfers that come and stay for a night and surf in the areas that are good for surfing. So we see that quite a bit.
Any other questions? Okay. I want to thank you very much. Our conversations will continue, and I appreciate that you've outlined to us what direction you want to go in. And I think we're going to have a conversation at council about parks and our strategy around that. This may not come up right away, but it's something we'll keep in mind as we go forward with that, and how it falls into our strategy around parkland areas. So thank you for your diligence. 22 years is a long time, and I hope that we can find some conclusion to this in the next few months. So maybe, I don't know what expropriation, how long that will take, but let's be optimistic.
Yes. Well, thanks again, everyone.
Okay, thank you. If we could move along on our agenda to the nominating committee, and Councillor Oikel, if you want to bring forward the motion that relates to the work that the nominating committee has done.
Certainly, thank you very much. To her Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that the municipal council accept the recommendations of the nominating committee and approve the appointment of Gary Mailman and Michael Hurdle as members at large to the Planning Advisory Committee for the period of January 14th, 2025 to November 2026, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Is there any question or discussion? Anything you want to add, Councillor Oikel?
No.
All those in favor of the recognizing the appointments of Mr. Mailman and Mr. Hurdle to the Planning Advisory Committee indicate by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to staff reports and Fire and Emergency Service Coordinators Annual Report. Mr. Kennedy, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I can get out of this presentation. So this is an overview. I'm going to put this up a little bit, although I'm pretty short. There we go. So this is a snapshot mostly of 2023 data, so we're always a year behind on our data for a report. When we collect information from our registration that fire departments fill out annually as part of their registration process to provide services that they provide. So this data is like always a year behind. Some of the awards and stuff you'll see in here are from the past year. They're a little more updated, but the actual stats that you'll see are usually a year out of date because of the way we collect them. We collect them in June of every year. That's when registration is due, and then the data is compiled and try to do a report up for council in September. And last year, due to the elections, things kind of got pushed off until things settled down a little bit. Wasn't any sense in doing two reports to two separate councils when they changed, so decided just to stick with the one report. So the firefighter awards for the past year, so Lunenburg County has always been very high with awards and years of service, and it's a pretty amazing thing to see. So there were 80 50-year awards given out for fire services in the past year. So when you think about that, that's a pretty amazing feat on itself. And the members there, you can see, were Aubrey McCarthy from Hebbs Cross, Walter Jodry from the Northfield and District Fire Department, David Vino from the Mahone Bay and District Fire Department, Donald Russell and Philip Smith from Hempford and District, Mervyn Mossman from New Germany, and Charles Hurstman and Reed Wynot of Bridgewater Fire Departments. So those were the awards that were given out. And then there are other awards. So as Councillor Bell mentioned, the Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Service Awards are what the municipality gives out to fire services. In addition, they also give out a 20-year frame Blue Nose for councillors that are new. So we gave out 3 45-year awards, 5 40-year, 11 35-year, 9 30-year, and 19 20-year awards. So when you look at the Atlantic provinces or our county, they're very high in years of service. In Ontario, they're looking at a 15-year service medal to try to get firefighters to at least stay for a lengthier time, where they have a real trouble with that out there. And then we have a station plaque that hangs in each of the station that is a thank you from council on it, and every 5 years they have a station helmet that gets mounted on those plaques. And last year there were 3 of those given out, so there was a 6th year for the Middle Woodland District Fire Department, and there was one for Oak Hill and District Fire Department for 50 years and Blockhouse and District Fire Department for 80 years. So those stations were recognized for their additional years of service. And I should correct that, it's Italy Cross and Middle Woodland District Fire Department. Approved work plan, so there was a survey done with fire services, and the Fire Services Committee had a couple of workshops, and we formulated some information from that, from those 2 areas, and it came up with a work plan for myself to work at over the next 4 years. So the areas of concern, or the areas that were highlighted from those areas and put into the work plan, were safety, capacity and governance, recruitment and retention, and the regional training facility were things that were brought up. There's also a joint training facility in the town of Bridgewater, or for pump testing, which is now a mandatory requirement for a few years now. So the town of Bridgewater and the municipality of Lunenburg came together, and they have a test cistern in the ground that they use for pump testing or training now, that's being utilized by more fire departments. So this is just kind of a picture to show how it's utilized, and they utilize it for pump testing and training. So it's a fully authorized and certified system. And then we offer some soft skills training for fire leadership and firefighters that are, would like to move up into leadership roles. So it's not operational type things. It's not like how to do strategy and tactic. It's not how to do the actual fire ground stuff. There's, fire school and training that you can take for that. This is on like dealing with each other, dealing with station life, dealing with respect for each other in the station itself, which not all leadership roles in the fire service have that training. So this is just something that we offer to them. And this is a group that had done it in the past year at one of our local fire departments. And we have an outside facilitator that helps with this training that's very good at what she does. And they had 2 nights of training, and it was really well received, and they're looking for some additional stuff. So it's good to see that we're moving forward with this type of training, because it just helps leadership deal with the day-to-day operational things with people. Instead of, like I say, the fire ground stuff is easier. You train, muscle memory kicks in, and you do it. Dealing with people on a day-to-day basis and the personnel issues are sometimes some of the harder things that people struggle with. So we try to help with that if we can. This is the Fallen Firefighter Service Memorial site in Ottawa. And if you haven't ever been there and you ever get to Ottawa, check this out, because it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing tribute to firefighters. And not just structural firefighters, it's for all firefighters across all aspects of firefighting. So it's national defense, it's wildland firefighters, it's regular type, structural type firefighters, so firefighters across the gamut. There's a wall there, all the names of the fallen firefighters on it, and every year there's an annual ceremony in September that recognizes those firefighters who have fallen. And the statue that you see there points to the wall, and it was made from brass couplings that were sent from across Canada to be melted down to help form the statue. So it's a very significant thing for fire services. So the information collected from the 2023 registration year for last year's registration. So medical first responders, there were 227, and the year prior there was 204. Structural firefighters, 346, and there were 328. So structural firefighters are firefighters that are able to go interior or exterior on the fire. Active firefighters, so 605. The year prior was 603. So the numbers are kind of stabilized. In the past, we'd see jumps up and down. So whether that's some of the recruitment and retention things helping there, we really don't know 100%, but there are some stabilization numbers there, which are good to see. Junior firefighters, 39, and there were 31 in the previous year. Auxiliary members, 122, and then there was, the year previous was 124. Honorary members, 146, and then to 136. Self-contained breathing apparatus flow checks were all completed, so that's now a new mandatory function that all fire services in the county have to have their self-contained breathing apparatus, which is the tank they breathe and the face piece they wear when they're in dangerous environments. Those have to be fit tested every year to make sure that they meet manufacturer specifications and they're safe to use. And then pump testing has also been completed, and that's also a new mandatory requirement over the last couple of years that's been implemented to make sure that all fire pumps on all the trucks are operating to the standard that they need to be operating at. Firefighter safety as one of the concerns we had. Here's the call breakdown for the year, and it's not, if you add these numbers up, it's not going to give you 100% because I kept some of the really small ones out because it gets really busy on the graph to see it, but these are like the top percentages of what they respond to. So in 2022, there was 1,212 calls for service, and in 2023, there were 1,455. So you can see fire services are busy and they get busier. And as our communities get larger and more people reside in the areas, you're going to see more calls for service from that also. And I just throw in there, the town of Bridgewater did 39 mutual aid calls into MODL to assist MODL fire departments. Town of Mahone Bay did 27 calls into MOD coverage areas, and then they had 14 additional mutual aid calls on top of that. And the town of Lunenburg had 49 calls within District 1 and 2, and there was additional calls on top of that. So the additional mutual aid calls would be to areas outside of the municipality, so the other towns. They had crews that were sent to the wildfires in Shelburne. They had crews that were sent to Digby. So the crews get sent to different areas to assist with specialized equipment when they have it. So it kind of gives you an idea, like structure fires are still, it's only a small percentage. There was 27, 203 motor vehicle collisions, 19 vehicle fires, 278 medicals. So medicals are pretty high on a lot of the responses, 39 illegal burns, 42 smells of smoke, 100 fire alarms. So the fire alarms are pretty high. And they have to be responded to because, somebody could have an alarm go off in their house or a commercial thing and call up and say, oh, I'm cooking, and they could be actually setting a fire to the property. So they have to respond to make sure everything is okay. 408 mutual aid calls, so that's a big chunk when you consider mutual aid calls. 56 power pole incidents, so that could be like a line down or a tree line or something like that. And 57 grass, brush, or wood types fires. So that's kind of the breakdown of the call volume for departments. Here's some of the funding that municipality assists fire departments with. So recruitment and retention, there's a $50,000 budget for that. Workman's compensation, we don't have the last quarter for that. So we're working, this is like what this year's looking for. It's around $50,167 to cover firefighters for the WC premiums that are now available that the province brought in. And they now added another, I think, 8 presumptive cancers to the list. So there's 18 coverages now for firefighters, which is good to see. These are some of the grants that are from the municipality for firefighters that are done on an annual basis. So there's a matching grant, a municipal grant, a training grant, insurance grant, and a personnel insurance grant. So this is to help offset some of the costs associated with some of those operational things that fluctuate quite a bit from year to year. And then on the bottom, you can see that total fire taxes that were taken in last year were just around the $4.7 million mark from all the fire services. Funds raised through the departments from the Nova Scotia Fire 50/50 Fund. So the 50/50 proceeds were just up around the $500,000 mark, and fire department fundraising was around $742,000. So those are kind of where the numbers are. Funds that assist fire departments in many ways, so they can, through COVID, there was very little fundraising done, so this really assisted fire services through that hump of not being able to fundraise. That 700, I should clarify this, that $742,000 mark is the total fundraising, which includes that 50/50 draw. If you take that 50/50 draw out of there, that's what the fire services actually do for like breakfasts and those kind of fundraisings now. I should have had that broke down a little bit more, but I explain it as I go through it. And it allows fire departments to apply for funds and purchasing new equipment that they may not otherwise be possible to be able to get equipment for. So just departments that bought specialized equipment like extrication equipment for motor vehicle collisions where they have to cut vehicles apart and that kind of thing. So when they buy specialized equipment for that, they usually put it online or put it on their Facebook page that we bought specialized equipment and we utilize the 50/50 firefighter fund for that. And it just kind of goes back to show that those funds are being allocated and utilized for equipment that they're using for their firefighting activities and not for anything else. And that's what they're really intended for. So recruitment and retention is an ongoing thing, and they use it on a regular basis. We're trying to do things all the time with it. Continued funding to help with recruitment and retention, advertising, newsletters, and flyers, which was some of the cost of that number that was above there. Numbers have seemed to stabilize, like I said. It's good to see that the structural firefighter side of things and the firefighter numbers kind of staying where it is. It's not jumping up and down too much. We now have a new family assistance program that the municipality offers for fire services, which is another part of the recruitment and retention policy. So it allows firefighters and their families to contact counselors or talk to therapists if they wish to reach out and talk with somebody if they need it. The province also has an ability to get on a free one for them. So what ours offers, if they run out of their time lots or allotted amounts, they can go to the provincial one and utilize that also. So it gives them another one. And we kept ours because you don't know how long the provinces may stay up online and operational. So we want to make sure there's something there for them if they need it, which is important, right? The leadership soft skills like I offered. So it's one of the things that we're trying to spread more out there and get more take up on. And, fire departments are interested in doing that. So it's something that we're trying to get out. We have, like I say, we have one or two more that have approached me already this year for possibilities of having that conducted with them. So it's good to see that. And I've been taking some specialized training on resiliency and stuff for first responders. So I've been taking that out to fire departments and just kind of sharing that with them to help them to ground and center themselves and some of the things we can do to help keep ourselves a little centered and recognize when we're not, and that it's okay to reach out when we need to reach out, right? I'm one of the first people that'll admit it's okay to see counseling. It's okay to think therapists. It keeps us strong. It keeps our head in the game, and that's what we need, right? I utilize it. I'm not afraid to say so. It's 100% something that we need to do. So this is a cost of, did I skip by one? No. So this is a cost of what it costs generally, on average, to outfit one firefighter to do interior firefighting. So a standard helmet is $410. Rubber boots are $200. If you go to leather, you're looking at $500 roughly. So I got that here, $200 to $400 for a pair of leather boots. Gloves, $140. Hood particulate for blocking out particulate around your face and open skin on you. It's like a hood you wear. It's $155 for the one that blocks particulate and $70 for a standard. Bunker gear, the average cost is $4,000. I think I missed something there. It should be $3,800 to $4,500, but that's where the average is. SCBA, $10,800 is an average price. And then if you put a face piece on a firefighter for individual use, you're looking at additional funding for that too. Plus training, et cetera. So the cost just keeps continuing to build. But we add that up, it's a considerable amount of funding to operate to have one firefighter ready to do operational tactical firefighting activities, right? And that's not that's not including like apparatus and hose and all the things that go along with that and tools they need to do what they need to do. The weight carried by one firefighter averages 29.63 kilograms or 65.3 pounds. So that's when the firefighter is totally kitted up with his tools ready to go. That's what they are carrying for additional weight. Just thought it was a tidbit of information. And that's kind of wrapped up in a nutshell, I guess. I could go on and on and on about all kinds of things, but it's just kind of a thing that kind of gives council an idea where we are, that we've done some really good things, I think, with fire services, with the municipality and the fire service together. We've built some bridges and relationships, and I think it's really important. Anyway, that's kind of it for now. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Are there questions or information that people want clarified from the report? Councillor Brooks.
Just a quick question. Are all of the Are all of the individual departments registered with the modal as under the Municipal Charters Act? Are they all registered?
They're all registered under the municipality's policy. So under the MGA, the municipality has the ability to form policies. And under those policies, it's how fire services like register, and there's a list of things they have to do. So in that policy, it says they have to register annually. They have to say what services they provide. They have to say that they're going to have an annual meeting, and they have to tell the ratepayers, like, this is the rate, this is our budget, and then they can have a back and forth discussion on those things. So there's things they have to have in line in order to be a registration, in order to register and be able to show that they can provide the services that they're providing. So.
Great, thank you. Can you answer one more question? Procurement, are each of the departments still responsible for their own procurement? So for trucks, for example?
Yeah.
And is there any oversight of any of the departments at a higher level regarding procurement?
Not at this particular time. Like, departments are all incorporated under their own umbrellas of incorporation, and there's several different ways that they're incorporated. So the trucks have to be ULC certified to a certain level when they buy new apparatus to operate within Canada. So they're NFPA standards, but there's also a UL S15 standard that says that apparatus driven or be operated in Canada has to meet this criteria. So it has to have, the pump has to meet certain criteria, the truck has to meet, so there are standards they have to follow. They just can't go out and buy a milk truck and say, I'm going to make it into a fire truck. You can do that, but it won't be certified. It takes a lot of extra care and caution to make a certified truck. So the majority of departments, when they buy a new truck, it's a certified, ULC certified piece of equipment that meets all the standards, so.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you very much. I know the answer to this, but I want, for other council members that may not, as well as the public. So the fire tax that's collected, that is given totally back, all of it, to the fire departments, and that the grant money is a separate amount of money that the municipality gives. We do not use that fire tax money to take that grant money out of.
That's correct. It's separate funding? Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to have that clarified.
That was
Thank
great,
you.
Good question.
Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. You and I had a conversation fairly recently about fire departments needing to fundraise for dry hydrants. We had talked about that being in our community climate plan as one of the strategies that we're going to be looking at employing. Can you provide any updates on that?
I really don't know where we are with that. My understanding that it's supposed to be something that's in the 2025 year budget discussions, but maybe somebody can qualify or clarify that more, but that's my understanding of where it's going to be. What it's going to look like, how much it's going to be or whatever, I have no idea. Like, that's still up for discussion.
Yep, the project hasn't started. The plan identified it between 2025 and 2027.
Supplementary, if I may. I have a fire chief who's requesting that we bump that timeline up if at all possible. Thanks.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. In your report, you show a figure of 536,000 plus for money comes in from the 50-50 draw. That is an avenue of money we didn't have before COVID,
Right.
which has continued on, and a lot of departments are benefiting from that. One of the figures that you don't show in your report, which might be of interest, is provincial first responder grants that come into this area. Mm-hmm. There are a number of departments who have benefited for bunker gear, et cetera. I don't know if those figures for public interest should be included, because the actual fire service delivery cost is more than what you're showing. And so I think that's a figure that in the future report might want to be reflected. I don't know if it would require a lot of work on your behalf. I think just a simple question at the end of the year, has your department been a benefit of?
And I think that information is probably accessible through the fire marshal's office or the extension of that office that looks after that. I think you're looking at the Emergency Service Providers Fund, that grant system. Yeah, I think we could get that information if we ask for it. Yeah, that's something that's definitely doable. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Anything else anyone wants to ask? Councillor Smith.
One of the frustrations I hear a lot about from fire departments in my area is around cell service. Are you involved at all with advocacy work around that to the province?
No, not typically, but I do sit on a couple of committees. But the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia is really the advocate for fire services that push this thing into the government. So they're kind of the representative or the voice that sends anything from fire services to government, right? So usually these associations in the different municipalities will send stuff to the Fire Service Association in Nova Scotia, and then they take it to the Nova Scotia government, and that's how the voice is heard. That's how it's normally done, right? Yeah, that's kind of how the system is supposed to work. So you're right, there are definitely cell issues, and even with the new TMR system that's been integrated, there are still a lot of dead zones in the province with those radio systems also. So it's just a matter of more towers and in places where they need to be. They are, putting new towers in for these radio communication stations, but the cell service is another beast all on its own.
Alex?
Just wanted to mention our Regional Emergency Management Organization, our REMO, has identified in their after-action reports for several events that cell coverage was an issue. In fact, one of our events was a major communications outage. So there has been advocacy from that regional group to the province about the issues around cell coverage.
Councillor Reinhardt.
In your pie chart of the calls, a big chunk was mutual aid. I was just wondering if you could give a couple examples of what those were.
How mutual aid works? It could be, it's normally it could be a vehicle with entrapment, known entrapment, could be multiple vehicles. So some departments have automatic mutual aid set up where if there's a call for mutual aid, they automatically hit, like this area, for example, you'll have 2 or 3 departments automatically responding here for if there's a fire call or a motor vehicle accident with entrapment. And other areas have the same thing set up. If it comes in as a known fire or they say it's a known fire, a structure fire, they're automatically paging a number of departments automatically respond to those areas. So that's how the mutual aid system kind of works, and it seems like it works very well. And it's through the daytime and things like that when numbers are lower for people because they're not in the community, they're working outside. Mutual aid helps bring assistance to areas when they need the help, right? So we're pretty lucky we can have a lot of equipment and a lot of personnel on scene with the mutual aid system that's in place.
Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see that there are more cancers being covered under the assistance there. Given that bunker gear is something that has cancer-causing agents in it, like Forever Chemicals, is there any plan to transition firefighters away from using those ones? Or, I mean, the cost for this gear is so high anyway.
It's like the cost is up there. So the Lunenburg, I can't really speak on that too much because each fire department does their own thing on the risks associated with that, those new chemicals or the chemicals that have been those. There's other items of clothing that everybody wears that has that same type of chemical. Anything that's fire retardant or flame resistant or watertight all has those kind of chemicals in it, right? So it's just the exposure amount you have to it, which luckily the volunteer fire service in our areas don't have a lot of exposure in that gear. Like you're not in it 24/7. But when you're in it, hopefully you're in outside areas. I mean, there's only 1 or 2 departments that I know of in Canada right now that have actually switched over to a newer type of materials, just because the cost is so astronomical for the newer stuff too, right? I don't know the costing of the new stuff, but yeah, so that it is an issue, you're right, and fire departments are talking about it. I don't know of any move currently to move to the new standard of or equipment or the type of gear or materials that it's made out of.
I want to thank you, Chris, for your presentation and for your relationships with the fire departments because you're a great source of really detailed information of what's happening on the ground with the fire departments. So I appreciate that relationship and that information you can provide to us as councillors. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right, we will move next to household water supply financing budget options, and Ms. Barry will lead us through this. I just want to maybe preface this by saying this became an issue just before Christmas when we were contacted by a resident and realized that the list for the people in need of wells on our well program list was very long. It exploded, and I think you'll speak to that. So that's why it's been brought to council early in the year, given that there were people going on that list as late as November, and we know that the fall was dry. So I'll turn it over to you to lead us through the report and the conversation that will come from it.
Thank you, Mayor. So staff recommends that council approve $600,000 from general operating reserves to be used for the water supply upgrade lending program. So as I'm sure we're all aware that much of rural Nova Scotia relies on private wells for their household water supplies, and many of those wells in the southwestern area of the province are shallow dug wells or cistern type systems that experience dryness throughout the year. So in 2016, council initiated a program to provide potable water at the rate of 4 liters per person per day, up to 4 jugs per household. As we know that that does not sufficiently address the household water needs, so it's people have to gather up their kids and take their kids to the LCLC to go get showers. They have to take their household laundry to the laundromat, and it is a burden on households. So this past fall summer season, we've had 51 households register for the coupon program. And approximately 30% of those coupon users use the program for 3 or more weeks. And obviously, we're not necessarily capturing all the people who are purchasing water to support their households. So as a result of the number of dry wells and the increased use of the coupon program, council created the water supply lending upgrade program. And so that provides financing to upgrade water systems, so either drilling a new well or electrical upgrades that may be required to create water security for that household. And so that is a loan program that gives households up to $20,000 or 15% of the assessed value of the household, whichever is less. So as a qualifying measure for that financing program, you have to have no outstanding taxes or liens with the municipality, and this loan is registered as a lien on the household. The payment of the loan is similar to taxes, so if you do not pay the loan, it can go through to the property tax sale process. Currently, the annual budget for the program is $50,000, which permits approximately 3 households per year to receive these upgrades. And as we know, the dryness this year, the fall time especially, has been very bad. And so the waiting list, not including the 3 people that were scheduled to have upgrades this year, has ballooned to 31 people. So even with an attrition rate that could be potentially high as people source their own financing to address their water issues, we could have this waiting list just of the current households up to 10 years to get rid of this waiting list. And there is about 5 to 6 households that are regular coupon users that are on the waiting list, whereas we still have, another 45 households that we could reach out to and talk to about the financing program, but it feels a little disingenuous if we're asking people to join a waiting list that's going to be over 10 years long. So the allocation of the $600,000 comes from reserves, and that would address the entire backlog of the financing program. And of course, council could always choose to increase the budget for a lesser amount. For example, $150,000 would allocate money for approximately 8 households. So as I said again, the money comes from general operating reserves. It is a financing program, so the money would go back into operating reserves over the 15-year loan period. And the principal payments go back to the operating reserves. The municipality does cover the $450 registration program fee, but other than that, the rest of it is financing. The workload for municipal staff is minimal, and it involves just the setting up of the loan by the finance department. And the Clean Foundation handles all of the intake and administration of the program. So in conclusion, staff are recommending to increase the amount, or the budget amount for the water supply lending program to $600,000 this budget year to help these 31 households achieve water security and resiliency.
Okay, thank you for that. And if we could have the motion put on the floor, and then we'll have discussion around it. Councillor DeLong.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that the municipal council approve funding of $600,000 to the Clean Energy Financing Water Supply Upgrade Lending Program from the general operating reserves.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Vino. The floor is open for discussion and questions on this. Councillor Bell and then Councillor Moore.
I'd just like to put a spotlight on the seriousness of the situation. In the month of December, in my community of Conquerall Bank, I am aware of 5 wells that went dry during that month. These residences experienced this problem for people living in these homes between 30 and 50 years. Never seen this problem before. During the last 30 days, 4 new wells were drilled in that community. 3/4 of the wells were unfit for human consumption after drilling, between the depths of 200 feet and 301 feet. The problem that we have along the west side of the river in my community is you can spend the money of going down 300 feet and end up getting salt water. Guess what? You still have to pay for the well and you still don't have water. This is a problem that has highlighted each year more and more on the west side of the river. I don't know if it's happening in other areas of the municipality, but I don't know what we blame it on. Some people would say it's climate change. I do know that approximately 6 years ago, we cut down half the force in Conquerall Bank, and it seemed like after that period when we lost the forest land, a lot of people, including myself, ended up not having dry wells, but very low wells where we never had that problem before. So I just wanted to share that information so that people understood how important this was for people to be able to access a program like this, especially when they've been living in the same home for 30 or 50 years. This highlights that we do have an issue that seems to be growing. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Through you to Elena, can you tell me, well, maybe I have to go to Elena, but through Susan to Elena maybe, the $600,000 coming out of general reserves, what does that leave us in the general reserves up into our next budget?
I will have to defer that question to Elena.
Through your worship to Councillor Moore, it's off the top of my head because I didn't bring this to your attention, but the reserves have, there's probably 12 million at least in that general operating reserve. We have over 20 in our full reserve pot. Yep. And when we have our discussion about our 5-year financial strategy in our upcoming budget discussions, we'll talk about those more. This is a financing program, so it does, it does bring the money back into the reserves, and if properties sell, then the entire loan gets paid off. So the money comes back faster. We've noticed that quite a bit, even in the LaHave Straight Pipe program, where many of the loans that we have outstanding, as the property sells, the money comes right back in. So
thank you.
I think it's something that probably would be, we had a big discussion about this as staff, but we think that if you have this, it's just an emergency for people, water, and I think it's something we probably could do within our plan.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you very much. Probably for you, Elena. If with doing the 600,000 for the rest of this here budget year, will then there need to be another 600,000 for 25, 26 as well? Will we, or even more?
I'll handle that. So we don't actually expect you'll be able to use the 600,000 in this fiscal year, just simply for processing time and residents being able to go forward. So I don't expect that you're going to see all 30 of those properties stay on the list. Even with our clean program, we have as Susan referenced, there's an attrition rate. So folks sign up for the program and then decide it's not for them, or they're not actually eligible, or something like that happens. So this is our estimate for what the program will cost to address 30 households. We don't actually think you have 30 households to address once the attrition rate happens, but we have a referral problem in that residents say, you know, your coupon program's ended, what can I do? And we say, sign up for the financing program. Well, how long's the wait? Maybe 10 years. So we have to address that, but we don't think that you're going to need, for example, another 600,000 next year. This will carry through.
And there is an issue with weather, too. I mean, it will depend what next year's weather is like in terms of the number of people who actually may require it. So budgeting may be the challenge for what is needed, but it's a fair question. Councillor DeLong.
Yeah, there are a number of dry wells right now in District 8, so I'm glad that we're addressing this. The Clean Foundation, do they have the capacity to shepherd this many more wells through their program?
It is my understanding that they do, but perhaps Alex could provide more clarification.
I think they have on occasion had delays. I know they've had some staff turnover just in the last couple weeks. So they may be slower than we'd like getting through that. But we'll rely on them to let us know if that's an issue. And because we've had this significant uptick in the number of homes on the list, we'll be paying attention to that to see if we can't hurry them along.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks for the presentation, and I anticipate supporting this. I just wondered if you had any information about what provincial programs are available for people having trouble with their wells, and does the province offer a fund, and are people able to access that?
From my understanding, the only one I'm aware of is Housing Nova Scotia grant. That is an income qualified grant, and it would only provide up to $7,000, but it can be used towards wells.
If I may, the provincial response to the drought-like conditions in 2016 was to amend the MGA to ensure it was very clear that municipalities were able to provide a financing program.
Any other questions? The motion is has been moved and duly moved and seconded to approve funding of $600,000 to the Clean Energy Financing Water Supply Upgrade Lending Program from the General Operating Reserve. All those in favor indicate by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. I'm sure that those households that will be contacted will be very relieved. And so thank you very much for that. And to staff for, I know, quickly putting this together and being very responsive on that. Thank you. Sure.
Sorry, just to take one extra minute. Susan Berry doesn't normally do this type of policy work or presentation to council, so I really appreciate her stepping up to help meet that timeline. And this project is a great example of how we are sometimes quite successful at cross-department collaboration, because the financing program is a result of planning's experience, administration, and corporate services stepping up, and obviously finance figuring out how to manage manual loans, which is always fun, isn't it? So thank you very much, team.
And this literally all happened between December the 14th? 12th or 14th and now. So there were a lot of people that put work in at a time of year when not everybody's here for a lot of that time. So I really appreciate this action, and I know that those households will be very relieved to know that we've been able to do this. So thank you. So let's move on, and Ms. Bolivar will speak about ProKids reserve budget request.
Thank you. Okay, I am here to request the use of ProKids reserve funds to fulfill some applications that we've been receiving that we no longer have funding to cover. So to date, in 2024-2025 fiscal year, we've processed over 300 applications for ProKids. I'm sure you're all very familiar with what ProKids is, but for those who may not be aware, it's a financial assistance program for youth in the municipality who, due to lack of funds, may not be able to participate in recreation, sport, and cultural activities. So we have processed over 300 applications to the tune of just over $76,000. So in addition to council's contribution to the program, we've raised over $26,000 in grants and donations so far this year to the program. With that said, we have spent all of that money fulfilling the applications that we've received. We are still receiving applications. Just this morning sitting here, I've already received 3 more, so I have about 15 in the queue that I currently don't have the funds to fund, even in part. So the ProKids Reserve currently has just over $29,000 in funds, and that's an accumulation of funds over multiple budget years. So what happens is if in one fiscal year we don't spend the entire budget, so example, we have a $50,000 budget, we only spend $40,000 funding applications, there's a remaining $10,000, that would then go into the reserve for future ProKids application use. So that is the reserve I'm asking for to use. So we have seen a significant increase in applications. Like I said, we funded over 300 this year so far, and that's an additional 39 users so far over last year. So we are looking to spend up to another $10,000 out of the ProKids Reserve to help fund up until the end of March of this fiscal year.
Okay, if someone would like to put the motion on the floor, and then we'll have discussion. Councillor Hubley, thank you.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approve up to $10,000 in additional funds for the ProKids program for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, and further that these funds come from the ProKids Reserve. I so move.
Okay, we can open the floor. Oh, we need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. We can open it for questions or discussion. Anything anyone wants to ask? Councillor Oikel.
It's not necessarily a question about whether or not to do it or not, because obviously, for me, it's a no-brainer. But I'm just wondering whether or not this needs to always be coming to us, whether or not there is a way, because it is a reserve designated for ProKids, that they can just automatically take it out when it's needed. Could somebody? Oh.
Ms. Wenzel, you're going to address that?
It's extra money that was put away, that was already spoken for, approved. It was already money that was approved.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Oikel. Anytime money is allocated out of reserves, it needs council approval. So when you approve your budget, that gives us council approval to use it. Or if we have financing at year end, there's changes from the budget, you give us your approval. So this is asking for money out of reserves, and council does have to approve that.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks for your presentation, talking about this. I think that this is really an important thing. I guess my question for staff is there any analysis in front of us if we need to be looking at allocating more funds to this program because it's so important? So we're dipping into reserves now. It looks like that's not going to last very long. I guess this is an open conversation and one we'll have at a different strategic planning point, but this is one that I really think is very important to the community. And so I don't know if you folks have prepared or will prepare going forward some more info for us as to anticipated needs going forward.
I can note that since the inception of the program in, I want to say 2011, 2010 or 2011. Last year was the first year we had to request the use of reserve funds. So last year was the first time that we went over and above our budgeted amount. With the cost of registration fees, equipment costs, all of those things continuing to rise, I think it would be a great conversation to have about increasing the budget for ProKids.
I expect we'll see that come forward with our budget considerations over the next number of months. So there's lots of time for that, Councillor Brooks, that you can remind us of that at the appropriate time. Any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, have we also been expanding like what's eligible for funding over the last few years? Is that part of?
No, the same program types are still covered under the program, so it's all recreation, sport, and culture. There are other funding programs provincially and nationally. Kids Sport is through Sport Nova Scotia. That is specifically for sports that are registered with their provincial sport organizations, so that does limit how many activities are funded. And then there's Jumpstart, which is all physical activity and sport. So it is a little broader than just sport. However, Jumpstart, I think we're on the third time this year that they've run out of money this fiscal. So they're also feeling the crunch. So, yeah.
Okay, you've heard the discussion and questions, and the motion is on the floor to approve $10,000 in additional funds for the ProKids program, with the funds coming from the ProKids Reserve. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Bolivar, for that. We could move to the Seahawks Minor Football Club Management Agreement, and Ms. Payne will take us through this. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Councillors. As the Mayor has alluded to, that my staff report that I presented in the package is to discuss the notification that I received in December of 2024 from the Seahawks Minor Football Club, requesting that they withdraw from entering into a management agreement with the municipality, which would have seen them utilizing what is commonly known as the Pine Grove Park as a practice field, or a couple practice fields for the Seahawks club. And part of the explanation in their email was they were having some insurance challenges and just some logistics within their own club to be able to take on that type of project at this point in time. So before I get into the discussion part of my report, I thought it would be beneficial to give folks a little bit of background. I know some have sat around the table and are very familiar with the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association, but for some you may not be, so I want to give a little bit of background. So in July of 2011, and maybe it was in 2010, when residents came before council, asking council to consider entering into a management agreement with a nonprofit society so they could look at developing a park on a piece of property that was owned by the municipality, which was a vacant piece of property at the time, and hence that became what was known as the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association Park. So and during that time, 2011 to 2022, that play association, and I have to say was spearheaded by volunteers, community members. During that time frame, they put a number of amenities in the park, and I think the very first one was the multi-purpose pad, which became quite well known as the outdoor rink in the wintertime. So it was well utilized. As the years followed, they included playground equipment, a gazebo, there is a vault toilet there, they had installed a splash pad, put a walking trail around the grass area, not really an established or an official soccer field or any official type of playing field, but often used for soccer and different things of that nature. So if I fast forward it to the fall of 2022, I had some members of the board reach out to me that they were struggling with volunteers and Anybody that's familiar with Joint Registry of Stocks, if you're registered as a nonprofit society, you have to have 5 board members to be maintained as a registered society. So they were having challenges for filling those board positions. So in discussions with them, we agreed that we would host a public meeting, inviting people from the community to hear about some of the challenges that the park was facing, particularly around the volunteers. From that initial first meeting, there was a number of people in the community that did attend, and there seemed to be interest in the park, wanting it to maintain under this community model. So that encouraged the group to have a second meeting, where they really discussed about the need for having 5 board members, and that some of them were planning on resigning, and so that they would need to have a number of volunteers to take on. At the end of the day, unfortunately, there wasn't anybody that stepped up to sit on the board. So the board at the time made the decision that they would no longer be the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association. So they went through the process of deactivating or deregistering as a nonprofit society, and where the municipality is the owner of the property, the municipality was essentially provided the property back. During those meetings, I would like to clarify that, when we had those discussions, community members were given some of the risk of handing it back to the municipality, which one of the risks could have been completely closing the park, to not having the park at the same standard, to having less of amenities in the park. So that was handed to the municipality. And initially, the park remained closed because of some safety concerns that were identified from both staff and from our insurer. So a number of the amenities were removed, such as the multipurpose pad. Some of the playground equipment was also removed. So that just gives you a little bit of background. In July of last year, council did give direction to staff to do the minimal that was needed to open the park to be a passive park. So staff moved forward on that direction of council, and the park was open. So now I'm going to fast forward or go back a little bit to February 6th, 2024, and that is when the Seahawks Minor Football Club did come make a presentation to council, asking them to enter into a management agreement so that they could establish 2 practice fields and 1 small drill field, installing non-permanent lighting system on the fields, and constructing a large field storage building. And the intent was at the time to move some of the playground equipment that remained closer to the splash pad so that you could have 2 separate areas, so that you would have the field and the practice area, and you would have the play area in another one. So staff was given the direction to draft a management agreement, and that was brought forth in July, and where a motion was made to proceed with that. So as I had previously stated, in December 17th, after a number of verbal conversations with the Seahawks, they were facing challenges with insurance, and I think having some struggles with their own volunteerism within the club. They officially notified me, and so that's why I'm bringing the report to officially notify council that they'll no longer be entering into that agreement. So part of the discussion in my report is, since the Seahawks will not be proceeding with that, I think there needs to be discussion had around what role the Pine Grove Park plays in the municipality's park system, if any, and of course that will be part of the discussion I anticipate council might have on the special council meeting on the 23rd. Currently, in our Parks and Open Space Standards and Guidelines document, the Pine Grove Park is listed as a destination park. And the reason why it was listed as a destination park was primarily because of the outdoor rink, with a number of those amenities being removed, depending on council's direction to staff concerning the Pine Grove Park. That destination may need to be upgraded. When the park was reopened last year, the washroom did remain closed due to safety concerns with the entrance, and the splash pad also had remained closed. Public health does have regulations that need to be followed when it comes to operating a splash pad. The splash pad requires upgrades to the electrical, in which there was an estimate at that time, this was last year, so that estimate could change, but at that time it was between $3,000 and $4,000. And the water treatment equipment also needs to be installed, which was purchased by the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association, but was not installed. And that cost to install, that was included in the original estimate of $3,000 to $4,000. In doing some research around the regulations of operating a splash pad, staff had discovered that some sort of on-site disposal system or recirculating system is required. Currently, the discharge from the splash pad drains into a ditch. So the cost for all this still needs to be determined. And of course, we wouldn't go out and do any of that unless there was a direction from council wanting to re-establish that splash pad. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to bring to council's attention of what has been removed, some of the challenges and some of the challenges you've heard from the community members. I will state that when we post that our parks are closed, I think it was December 1st or December 2nd, we also advertise that means that there's not as much maintenance, that you're still encouraged to go and use our park systems, whether they have gates or not, just to recognize that we're not going to have our park staff there as regularly as we would during the regular season. We do have a number of parks that don't have gates, and Church Lake is one that comes to mind. So again, we would have stated that it's officially closed, but you just wouldn't have regular maintenance. I have been in correspondence with our engineering staff who manage the park crew and look after the maintenance. And I do know that Maria stated she did encounter a walker there at the park one day and who had indicated some of the garbage. So she has asked our park staff to do more regular checks on the garbage. So I just want to put that, to respond to some of that as well. And one of the other things I did have in my staff report was that in conversations with former board members of the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association, when they did have the splash pad operating, they did receive complaints from one of the neighbors that their well went dry. We have not received any complaints from that neighbor, but we also haven't had the splash pad operating. So I cannot confirm or deny whether the neighbor's well has went dry since the stopping of the splash pad, but I just want to provide that information because I'm trying to provide you as much information as possible. So two reasons for the report today was to officially notify you that the Seahawks has withdrawn and to look at possible future discussions that we will need to have around the Pine Grove Park. In my staff report, I have a number of alternatives for council they may want to consider. One is to keep the park open as a passive park, which was the direction as last year, and managed by the municipality. In saying that, upgrades would still need to be made to the washrooms, the grounds, and other areas. And that would have some budget implications. Look for alternative uses for the property. It was a vacant piece of property at one point in time. It became a park. Are there other alternative uses? Close as a park and remove the remaining features. And the fourth one is hold a community meeting and receive feedback from the public on the vision that they may have for the property before making any final decisions. And basically, I haven't made any recommendations, but in my conclusion, it talks about having the discussion and hearing from the community could aid council in making a decision concerning the property. So this report was purposely for information.
Thank you very much. I think that gives a good background on the history, particularly for those new council members who have not heard the discussion before. And it also adds on to the information we heard from the public earlier today about the history of the park and what amenities were there, what's been removed and so forth, and also what the community has seen as challenges. Before we go into any discussion on this, I think Councillor Burns would like to bring forward a motion so that gives some direction to maybe facilitate the discussion that might follow. So, Councillor Burns?
Thank you very much. So my motion is to Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council direct staff to hold a public information and engagement session to gather input from residents on the future use of Pine Grove Park, and requests that staff bring the results of such information and engagement session to council in the form of a report along with options for the future use of the park.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor DeLong. Councillor Burns, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you very much. So first, I'd like to thank everyone who stayed today to hear this portion of the agenda, and thanks to staff and Trudy for bringing the report forward. You know, the history of Pine Grove Park here is one of obviously best intentions and best efforts, but lately we're seeing that the outcomes aren't really reflecting neither the intentions or the efforts that folks, whether they be staff or whether they be community, are putting into the park. You know, you've heard this morning from Debbie, from some community members here, and some folks who came to support her but did not speak about some of the issues that they see at the park, and I know that there are a few others that, you know, I've spoken with staff as well and have raised, and that will be ongoing. But what we're seeing is some various forms of vandalism and stuff that can be generously described as shenanigans, you know, happening in the park. So we need to find a way to sort of look at that in the short term. But really, the solution here is the medium to long term. What is the future use of this park? And we can't answer that without actually asking the community. I can tell you there's a great deal of interest in the community for this. I've spoken with people both in person. The community Facebook group is alive with discussion on this. And you know, people do reach out to me regularly on this. I would say that, you know, following the campaign, continuing through it, this has been the strongest local issue that's been raised to me as a councillor. There's always the general issues that we face, but this is the one that people have really hammered home to me. So, you know, while I recognize that, you know, the municipality has done some great efforts in the past to reach out to people about this. A lot has changed since 2022, and so I think that, you know, people are sort of feeling that people are sort of feeling disconnected from the actions that are happening at the park. I know that a lot of people felt and did not realize that even the Seahawks management was coming up and that was happening, and so I think that this engagement session is really required in order to sort of repair and sort of rebuild some of that feeling in the community that they have ownership of the park in the first place. And so I think that it's important to do on that, and it's important to get to the right outcomes. Just going through my notes here. And so, you know, today, and just one point I do want to make is that I think it's really important to do this because, you know, when we made that decision as a council last July, although I wasn't here and I recognize I don't have the full background on how we arrived to that decision, I wasn't part of every conversation. One of the outcomes was that I felt like it kind of pitted the community against the Seahawks, and I don't think that's fair. I think the Seahawks are a great organization, and that shouldn't be the outcome here at all. And I think that we've done a lot of work to get away from that. So ultimately, you know, the desire for this council, we have this desire to increasingly engage in our residents, and so with this engagement, we're not presupposing any outcome here. We're simply moving to actually engage with the community and say, well, what kind of outcomes would you like to see? And so knowing that and knowing that we're not setting ourselves on a path that predetermines any specific outcome, but just gets us to a better outcome because more voices are involved, I'd ask for council's support today in moving to a public engagement session.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Are there other, Councillor Moore, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you. Yes, I will be supporting the motion that Councillor Burns has put on the floor. My question is, it sounds like I've sat through when it was first introduced as the park and then when it became less of a park and then what happened with the Seahawks and all that kind of stuff. My question is, this sounds like there's interest of bringing back what used to be for the community by public input this morning. My question is, the POPA, the Pine Grove Association, Park Association, did they dissolve completely under Registry of Joint Stocks?
They did, is my understanding.
Okay, so
doesn't mean to say that they, if you're, sorry, I'm kind of jumping ahead.
Sure.
I think your question is if another community or if they want to resurrect as a community organization, would that be possible? Yes, it could be.
And is there an amount of money sitting in an account somewhere? Because with every not-for-profit, there usually is an account, because that's why you need your 5 directors to be
on your board and all that good stuff, as a treasurer and stuff.
So where they deactivate it, they would have to go through the process of joint registry of stocks to become registered again. Whether they could reactivate as the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association would be up to the joint registry of stocks, but there would be nothing stopping a community group from registering. When the Pine Grove Outdoor Play Association did deactivate, they did have money in the bank, and where they had provided the municipality, basically handed the property back to the municipality, they also handed the money that was in their bank account. So that has been put in a Pine Grove Park reserve, and the amount in there now is $10,265.
Perfect, that's what I need to know, thank you.
Any other questions? You've heard the motion from Councillor Councillor Wickle.
Thank you. I'm just wondering whether or not, if we do this motion, does that mean then that the park is going to be closed until something is done, or, excuse me, or is it still, the community still use it as a passive park?
Well, again, I take my direction from council, so that would be ultimately up to you guys. Rated now, it is opened as a passive park. It's closed for the season, and I know that as closed, there's no gate. What the close means is that there's no high maintenance. We don't continue to do that. And I guess I'll use an example of Miller Point Peace Park. It is closed. It has gates. A lot of people go and park in that outer parking lot, but they walk around the gate and they still use it. So we still want people to utilize our spaces, just to be more conscious that we're not providing the level of service or standard that we would from May to December.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. And Councillor Weichel, I think here the motion wouldn't necessarily close the park. It would just say we're going to go to a public engagement. I think that some of the concerns that folks are raising are things that we could probably deal with without a motion at council. We wouldn't per se close the park, but if there's a step that we could take that would reduce vandalism. I've been sort of in the background talking about that stuff a little bit, so I think there are going to be some things that we could do that would address those, the concerns of residents that wouldn't require a formal motion at council per se. So we don't have to say the park is closed. We could just make it more difficult for people's, frankly, inexcusable behavior in the park, and continue on trying to make it work in the meantime while we look at what the future use is.
Just one question from me. What is reasonable to think when we can do a public engagement around this?
I would say in February. Is that reasonable? That's reasonable for me to be able to pull some of the questions in the format together and to work with staff.
Good. I think that fits within a reasonable amount of time, and one that will set us up for maybe consideration in our budget process as well. You've heard the motion from Councillor Burns regarding holding a public engagement session regarding the future of the Pine Grove Park. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. All those opposed, motion is carried. Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Councillor Burns, for your work on bringing this forward. We'll move to planning and development. Proposed amendments to Osprey Village Secondary Planning Strategy and land use bylaw. I'm not sure who's, Mr. Merrill? No? Both of you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm here today to ask for Council to consider initiating the process of amending the secondary planning strategy and land use bylaw of Osprey Village planning area. Specifically, if Council would like to consider initiating this process to specifically direct staff to hold a public information session and direct the Planning Advisory Committee to review the following proposed amendments that I'll just give a background on. So for a bit of an overview, Osprey Village is becoming a key growth hub within the district, but recent development interests have highlighted the lack of consistency of the area's planning policies that have created some obstacles for the growth of residential and commercial developments. This stems from a couple of things. One is the merging of two separate planning strategies that were merged together to create what is now the current Osprey Village Plan, as well as some of the original zones and designations that were created for the plan were created for types of development that are no longer suitable for certain lots. So through this report and presentation, we are asking Council to consider amendments to the Osprey Village Secondary Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw, and we'll also outline the necessary steps to proceed with these amendments and how to direct staff. And ultimately, these changes would allow suitable development to proceed as of right, which would avoid the delays of outdated policies that currently require case-by-case approvals, which tends to extend project timelines and development applications by about 4 to 6 months. So for a bit of background and context, there are 3 areas that were identified within the Osprey Village plan area where the current designation and zoning hinder the potential for suitable development to happen. And the identification of these 3 areas were the catalyst for the recommendations to amend the planning documents. So we'll talk about the first area. So it's located, I don't know if you can see my mouse there. Oh, there we go. So this is the first property that I'll talk about. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Thanks. So the first area is a property at the corner of Harold Wynot Road. It currently has the designation of industry, and it is specifically zoned as light industrial, or LI as an acronym. The property was originally part of its own planned area, so the Lunenburg Municipal Industrial Planned Area. At the time, notably, much of this land was and still is unserviced. So this planned area was consolidated with the Osprey Village Plan Area back in 2022. Notably, the original boundaries for the original Osprey Village Plan Area, a lot of that area is serviced. So it was a merging of this largely unserviced planned area with this serviced planned area. So the original Osprey Village secondary planning strategy generally encouraged high-density residential development throughout their policies, which would be feasible for the original area that was serviced, and high-density development would make more use out of the area servicing. Its original land use bylaw regulation supported this objective by setting a minimum residential density of 25 units per hectare, which would effectively prevent single detached dwelling from happening. However, this high-density standard did not change when the Osprey Village and Lunenburg Municipal Industrial Planned Areas merged. And so because of this, this standard for high-density residential development is also applied to a lot of unserviced properties within the now merged planned area, such as the property in question along Harold Wynot Road. So while promoting high-density development in serviced areas does make efficient use of existing infrastructure, applying the same standards to unserviced areas can hinder housing development where lower density residential development may currently be the only viable option for housing. So this was brought up when there was recent interest from developers to develop the property in question on Harold Wynot Road for residential use. However, with the current policies in place, it would be difficult to meet the high-density requirements while simultaneously being located in the unserviced area of the community. Which brings us to the first potential amendment, which is to remove this minimum density requirement for unserviced areas within the Osprey Village planned area. This would help to permit the scale of residential development that is feasible for properties that are not currently connected to central water and sewage infrastructure. So the second area is a combination of several properties along Nathan Sorello Road and Alley Champlain Drive. This area is currently designated as community use and is zoned specifically institutional, or IN is the acronym that shows up on the map there. This area was originally designated and zoned as such in anticipation of a large recreational facility, what is now the LCLC. However, as we know, the site for this development was moved to a different location. So because the designation and zoning of this area was chosen specifically for a development that ultimately is not going to exist at this location, in addition to the permitted uses for institutional zones being very restrictive, it has become a bit of a hindrance for the growth of other potential developments, which brings us to the second potential amendment, which would be to rezone and redesignate this land to permit residential and or commercial uses. And the third and final area is a small triangular property near the corner of Nathan Sorello Road and Pine Grove Road, which is currently designated residential and zoned specifically to be high-density residential, or R3. While there has been discussions to develop this property in the past under the high-density residential zone regulations, several constraints, mainly the size of the lot, make high-density residential development quite difficult. And so, as the property has been largely undisturbed and does contain natural features, its use could be better reflected by rezoning the property to open space, which would be the third potential amendment, to rezone and redesignate the property to be of the open space zone. So both the secondary planning strategy policies and land use bylaw regulations of Osprey Village will require amendments to rectify the aforementioned three cases. This will permit appropriate residential development on unserviced land, expand areas that permit residential and commercial uses, and protect open space that is otherwise currently undevelopable. So overall, we hope that this will help the Osprey Village plan to better reflect the community's unique development needs and patterns. So now that we've outlined a bit of the background and context for these potential amendments, we can kind of move on to a bit of an overview of the steps council can take if they would like to consider proceeding with this amendment. So the first step would be for our council to initiate the process, initiating a bylaw and secondary planning strategy amendment. Council would then direct staff to hold a public information session about these potential changes, after which staff will be directed to hold a planning advisory committee meeting, or a PAC meeting, about these potential amendments. So the PAC, after reviewing these conditions, will recommend council on how specifically to amend the documents and policies. So like, for example, in the case of if rezoning does happen, they will recommend which specific zone these properties would need to be rezoned to. After which, so now like you have more specific direction, council will have a first reading for these specific changes, after which the municipal clerk will publish a notice of public hearing about these amendments. Council will then hold a public hearing, after which they will pass a second reading, and then finally the municipal clerk will publish a notice of approval for these amendments being finalized. So that's just kind of a brief overview, and yeah, that's everything from me.
All right, thank you very much for that. I think this is our first foray into dealing with planning, and I had to read it a few times to kind of get it in my head what we were looking at. So I will ask Councillor Vino to put the motion on the floor.
Certainly, thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council direct staff to hold a public information session on the proposed amendments to the Osprey Village Secondary Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw, and further, request that the Planning Advisory Committee review the proposed amendments and make recommendations to council, and I so move.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Bell. And the floor is open for discussion or questions. And I'll just start that off by just asking at the time frame on what is likely for this to proceed.
So I think if Jeff could maybe answer that question. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd be looking at a public information session sometime between now and towards the end of February, so we can make the February Planning Advisory Committee. And then it's really dependent on, how much discussion is needed. So if it just needs one PAC meeting, it would then come to a March council meeting. But if it needed additional time at PAC, it could take a little bit longer.
Thank you. I think that's important for the public to hear what is reasonable to think we could do. Questions from council members? Okay. The motion's on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Contrary-minded, motion is carried. So that's bringing us, thank you very much. That's bringing us down to some of our reports from council and mayor and deputy mayor. So, Councillor DeLong, have you had a Region 6 report to give us?
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I report on the meeting, I'd like to give a brief overview on the function of the committee. There are 7 regional waste committees across the province. Region 6 is the one that represents Modal, along with 11 other municipalities. Region 6 is an intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, Bridgewater, Lockport, Shelburne, and Clarks Harbour, and the municipalities of the District of Chester, Lunenburg, Shelburne, and Barrington, and the Region of Queens Municipality and West Hants Regional Municipality. So this covers a population of approximately 97,000 residents. Each region has various duties that are carried out. Managers, directors, coordinators, and educators all work collaboratively to address issues of operations, administration, education, and enforcement. Within Region 6, we have 3 second-generation municipal solid waste landfills, 1 construction and demolition landfill, 1 compost facility, which is here in Modal, and 1 recycling facility. Region 6 acts as council's voice at the provincial table for stewardship and enforcement issues, a negotiator for upcoming developments and extended producer responsibility with circular materials, and it provides support for specific municipal waste programs such as school and workplace education, as well as R6 Recycle's online tools and app, and Join In, Bring Your Own, which is an initiative of the regions, I believe. If there's a wish for a more detailed presentation on what Region 6 is, I'd be happy to provide one on request, or we can ask that Region 6 staff support attend council to do so. I know that waste is not for everyone, but I honestly find this committee fascinating, and I've really enjoyed my time on Region 6, or as it's lovingly called, the Garbage Committee. At the most recent meeting, we received a much more comprehensive training session, given that there was a large turnover in committee membership. So all this stuff is pretty fresh, and I'm sure that staff would be happy to come out and give us some more education if we wish it. I'd like to note that I was elected to chair this committee, so this means that I will represent Region 6 members, including MODL, at the table of the Nova Scotia Solid Waste Resource Management Regional Chairs Committee. At the meeting, we then approved the 2025-2026 budget. The total budget amount is for $846,045, which is spread out over the 12 municipalities based on their populations. So the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, being the largest unit in the agreement with approximately 25,545 residents based on a 2021 population count, represents 27.68% of Region 6, and so our budget total was $35,940.35. If anybody wants more detailed budget presentation, that is also available. At the roundtable discussion, we covered the issues of unrecyclable fishing netting, so that's going to be brought to the province, as well as the massive fire at the facility in Kentville. and the one that we had at the MJSB site I believe it was last January. These were due to improperly disposed of lithium-ion batteries, which represents a huge safety hazard to emergency services and waste personnel. The cost to repair or replace these facilities is a cost borne by taxpayers, along with the need to then truck waste further to alternate facilities while repairs take place. The environmental damage can be massive with these fires, and the risk of wildfire is very high with lithium-ion fires, as they burn extremely hot and are very challenging to extinguish. Recycling options exist for these batteries, so we are going to bring this to the province for further analysis on how to better incentivize and enforce proper disposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor DeLong? Congratulations on taking the leadership on the committee, and I'm sure it will be to our benefit in terms of our kind of knowledge that we'll get from you and on the activities that are going on in waste management across the province. Any questions? We'll go to Councillor Vino for Deputy Mayor's report.
Thank you. Last night I attended a meeting at the Bridgewater Fire Department with Chris Kennedy, where we presented long service awards to members of the department. And for those that might be wondering why we did this, the fires know no borders. When we need the Bridgewater Fire Department to respond to events outside of the town limits, they show up. And this was our way to say thank you to those respondents that answered the call of duty. And one of the analysis I used last night that was well received was regarding responses. And we often hear the federal government, if it's shut down, we would know within a month. Provincial, within a week. Municipal, maybe a day. But firefighters, the hour, the minute, the second. And it just goes to show how valuable these members are, and I was welcome to attend on behalf of council. When that was finished, I popped over to Best Western and attended the Osprey Village Enhancement Plan public consultation, which was well attended, and I participated in check signings, agenda briefings, and all other meetings as assigned.
Thank you very much. And in December, moving on to the mayor's report, in December I participated in a roundtable sponsored by Dalhousie University. Kim Brooks, the president of Dalhousie University, and all her department chairs, think about that, it's a lot of resources, excluding the medical and dental schools, were here in this area for the entire day. There was a large round table with business leaders, not-for-profits, and elected leaders sitting together talking about challenges in their municipalities and constituencies, and also their strategic initiatives for the coming years. Beyond the round table, Dalhousie reached into the community and met with businesses, including Michelin, ABCO, the Bridgewater and Area Chamber of Commerce, with the purpose of identifying opportunities for Dalhousie to work with the broader community. It is an ambitious initiative, as they intend to visit 23 other communities throughout Nova Scotia. And although I haven't yet responded in a letter form to Ms. Brooks, the president, I think we need to think about, are there opportunities for us as a community to really, particularly from our work and our various departments, is there a way we can draw on the resources of Dalhousie to provide experiences for students that will tentatively benefit us and potentially them locating here and living here and creating a life for themselves in our community, but also in getting the benefit of the incredible academic resource that exists there. And I applauded them for their step outside HRM to reach into rural communities. As a graduate of Dalhousie, I thought it was really important because they have traditionally been viewed as insular, and I think this was a very positive step. So many people made lots of connections there, but it's one thing to make a connection, it's another thing to act on that. So it is something that I think I'll be giving some thought to and maybe talking a bit more to staff about what some opportunities might be. Further to that, the nominating committee met and interviewed candidates for the Planning Advisory Committee, and as you know, Councillor Oikel brought forward those recommendations. We used an interview process, which has not been the practice of selecting candidates in the recent past, and there was agreement that it was a useful addition to the process. As I mentioned at several opportunities, I think about the end of this year, we as a council need to take a serious look at what committees are essential to our operation and our work. Within 6 months, I think we should ask for a review of our external committee involvement to determine what is actually necessary. Clearly, there are some that do require our involvement, like MJSB and LCLC, the Planning Advisory Committee, the Police Board, REMO, but there are likely others where we could be satisfied as a council by having an annual report or presentation. So I think that's something that we're not going to do it in the next few months, but we're going to put it on the agenda in 6 months and have some work, and I'll bring forward a recommendation around that. The issue of gender-based violence became very real to our community with the recent murder-suicide in Mahone Bay. The previous council acknowledged gender-based violence as an epidemic following the release of the report of the Mass Casualty Commission. We have scheduled a presentation by Be the Peace Institute, which has been an active advocate for the provincial government to take action. The Mass Casualty Commission set out recommendations for all levels of government, and we have asked the Institute to bring forward some ideas of practical initiatives we can undertake to address this issue and begin the process of recognizing that we need to act in our community and that we can do things here if we decide that that's part of what we believe is our work. You will receive a schedule of the budget process that will be undertaken over the next 4 months. I am happy to report that all the budget discussions will be held in public, and there will be an opportunity for the public to attend meetings, ask questions, and give feedback. And I think that's in line with the direction that we made very clear about having more open meetings with public engagement, and I look forward to that. We may want to refine it in another year, but we'll give this a try and see where we get with it. Because this is a new approach, we will need to be flexible with the timing of the public meetings to allow people to attend during the day and the evening. It is a rigorous process and will require us all to be well rested and on our game to absorb and consider the information presented and also consider the feedback we will be receiving. I met with Greg Amos to hear of the work of the Riverport Community Park and their plans for development of the park over the next 3 to 5 years. And that will be something that we will be hearing about, not more this year, but in our plans for the coming years. But it was good to hear from Greg and hear about the steps that are being taken to create that park. I also met with Janet Peace to learn more of the work of the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy, their land acquisition plans, and their work in researching the carbon sequestering in wetlands in Kingsburg and Felton South area. MODL staff have been collaborating with them in their work, and they will continue to do that in the coming year. And finally, I met with Scott Christian, the mayor of the region of Queens. We identified a number of issues of common interest and shared a belief in the need for greater cooperation within the region. It was a very productive first step in building relationships with others in the region, and I know there will be things come forward that will, I think, come from that meeting and that discussion. So those are some of the things that I've been involved in. And I don't think I see any further business to come forward in this part of our meeting. So I would ask for motion to go in camera. And do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favor, raise their hands. Motion is carried. We'll take a 5-minute break and then resume our meeting in camera. Yeah, no, I've got to do our past is always going to be cryptic what we have been on place, so I like this. It's like, it makes it easier for the administration to try to put together.
I seem to have developed a subconscious response that when we get to the mayor and deputy mayor's updates, I take care of emails and do other things.
You want to listen now.
Well, all of a sudden there's stuff in there that I need to pay